Live from the studio complex in Baltimore, Maryland, you're listening to InfoWarlocks with Sam Kelly. There's a war on for your magic.
Yes! Welcome to InfoWarlocks, guys. I'm Sam. This is Jimmy Solesky.
You already know.
Mercury is in retrograde. Mercury's in Haterade right now.
Haterade. That's classic. I miss good old Haterade,
Yeah.
you know?
Since Mercury retrograde has happened, I had all my shit stolen in the streets of Baltimore City.
Nice.
My friendship with my longest term female friend ended up in fucking flames.
Okay. Let me stop you right here. Because the first two things you just listed sound like very common things.
Yeah.
Theft in Baltimore City and a female friendship coming to an end. Those are both very... I don't think any planets need to align for that to happen. But the rest, hey, you know? If you got anything else, it's going to shock me.
We had a carbon monoxide poison scare when my kids were in the house.
Oh, okay. That could be something.
Yeah.
That could be something. Let's start there.
Less toxic than living with their father was. So. It's been almost a year to the day that I left him and I went to the psych ward. Almost a full year since I started doing stand-up comedy again.
Oh,
so,
congratulations.
And I've been charging crystals and I've been charging warrants for my arrest. I probably shouldn't talk about this, but he's so the person that's watching this podcast most is probably my kid's father.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
is that out of contempt, or do you think he's still in love with you?
he just wants control. Like, see, growing up, I always used to fall in love with the villain in the story, like the Dark Lord character. And now, like, I regret that because I feel like I manifested that in my life. Like someone that's just completely obsessed with destroying my life.
Well, unfortunately, dating people is a very good method of acquiring podcast fans.
Yeah.
I've learned that.
Yeah.
Nobody listens to your podcast more than people that you are or did date.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm going through like a couple like people with that, but I mean, like they don't even listen though. I mean, they just want to get on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm like, you don't even get me off, so I'm not even gonna get you on. Yeah. But it's like, I don't give a fuck. Bring on the fucking evil eye. Just bring on the views, dude.
We'll take any eyes.
Yeah. But we were talking about because you are a musician and
so
you're
they
in a
say.
band. Yeah.
Allegedly.
I love the term bard because a bard can describe a musician. A bard could also describe a comedian.
I've never heard that term. I know being barred from someplace, like band, right?
Yeah. BARD, like the medieval bards from like the Renaissance or even like the Irish bards. And they were known for like casting. The reason why they were comedians is they were not only singers, they would get into like roasts with other people.
Gotcha.
And it was known as casting a satire on someone, like casting like a curse on someone. So, and how jesters were the only people that were allowed to mock the king.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so a bard is basically like it's kind of like an all-encompassing like entertainer of sorts.
Yes.
See, I've been in discussions previously on my podcast, Plug Live from the Studio podcast. If you're listening to this and thinking like, hey, I didn't date this guy, but let me listen to that too.
Yes. We aren't live from the studio. We're dead inside from the studio on this show.
And we were discussing recently with Ryan Buglazer, who owns the Hot August Festival, and it's coming up August 19th.
Yes.
That's Eric's cousin, actually. He's a DJ at WTMD, and we were discussing music genres and how, like, probably back in the day, there weren't really genres, because genres now are just kind of like the end result of mixing and melding all these different cultures of music together. And from that, now you have, like, hip-hop, which is obviously, I would say, primarily influenced by, like, African music or, slaves in the Americas or whatever, stuff like that. And then you have like country, which is probably primarily influenced by the old folk music and British, Scottish, Irish stuff, and then coming to the Americas. So, but then you have all those mix, and then you have all these amalgamations. Back in the day, it's like were there genres of music in like the Dark Ages? They probably had like church music and not church music. Like those were your two.
Right.
They like, and so like kind of in the same way you hear about these old jesters, these court jesters. And like people try to compare them nowadays to like stand-up comics. Like that's the
I'm
modern.
a divorce court jester, or just custody court rather. Yeah.
But like, if you look into it, which I have barely done, but I've watched one YouTube video, and that puts me at liberty to say that I think they were more. I think it's more like they weren't looked at as like fools, because like we have like the fool, right?
Yeah,
like that was like the other word for them, but they weren't really fools. Like they weren't just like stupid juggling idiots. Like a lot of them really had like respected places in the court, like in the royal court. They were the personal entertainer of royalty, and they were the ones who had the right to like make fun of the royalty and tease and do basically like political commentary. Like I almost think they're more akin to, I mean, I guess that is what stand-up comedians do now, you know.
But see, you have the court jesters that are the famous comics that sort of play the game and feed into the elite and only toe the line a little bit.
True. Like
Stephen Colbert types, you know, that kind of like...
Yeah, the court jesters were kind of like late night television
right,
hosts.
But then you had the bards.
Yeah.
And they were the real motherfuckers.
Yeah, like Louis C.K.
Yeah, right. He's barred from a lot of places.
He's barred from a lot of places.
But yeah. Yeah.
But I like that. I like that because I've always kind of thought, you know, it's kind of boring to just be, not boring. Look, you can only be good at so many things, but like I've always liked trying, at least in what I do, to kind of throw in a little comedy. Now, obviously it's way more lean towards the music, but like, you know, I like to throw in jokes in between. So I'm not saying they're good. I'm not sitting here being like, yo, this is something I'm good at. I'm saying this is something I attempt to do.
Right,
like I enjoy kind of like, you know, leading into the next song with like a story. Like, here is a fun fact about this song. Here's a stupid joke about it. Like something just kind of all encompassing, you know, where it's like, now that being said, I do not like musical comedy.
Really?
Not a big fan.
Wow. Not even Weird Al?
I think comedy during a music set is cool and tasteful when tastefully done, but music during a comedy set I almost never enjoy. I can probably count on one finger the amount of times that I've legitimately laughed out loud from a musical comedy set.
Right.
And
what
like,
about Stephen Lynch? Do you know who? It's Stephen Wright or Stephen Lynch?
Wright. I know Stephen Wright.
Stephen Lynch. He did like Particle Board. It's the only thing I can afford. I don't. He did a bunch of fucking songs. Like I can't remember, but I remember watching him on Comedy Central when I was younger.
Let me just say real quick, one exception to my rule: Dimitri Martin.
Oh yeah.
But he did a lot of different things. So the thing with Dimitri Martin was like he had like an act that was divided in like 7 different. He had like a drawing portion. He had like a straight stand-up set. He had like a guitar portion. Like he kind of did so much different stuff that it wasn't really like it was too much weight on any particular part of it, you know? Mm-hmm. Bo Burnham I respect, and like I find but the thing is like I find Bo Burnham amusing. I don't find him hilarious, and there's a difference. It's like if I'm watching a comedian for stand-up comedy, I'm looking for the hilarity of it, or at least poignancy, good points and stuff like that.
Well, see, I thought his one special Inside was actually kind of like the commentary of like COVID, of quarantine.
Yes, and I didn't watch that. So
you did it? Oh my God, you totally gotta watch it. It's amazing.
I should. People have told me.
Yeah, it's really good.
All the wrong people have told me I should watch that, which is why I haven't watched it.
But he had like a song like I Can't Believe You Made Me Vote for Joe Biden, you know, so it's like he had, you know, like, it was like a mix of...
You had my interest. Yeah. Now you have my attention.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, it's just like but we were just talking about how like, you know, you are in a band, you're a musician, but I was asking if you would ever go solo or anything, and you said there's like an embarrassment or a cringiness to just having your name out there.
I think that,
and that's basically what stand-up is. But
totally. But the thing is like, you know, and I think a good comparison to this is like, I think when you are a solo act. And this is more, and it's weird how the rules of conduct differ, not just between the different art forms, stand-up comedy and music, but even within genres. Like in hip hop, rap groups are much more far and few than a rap artist. They have like kind of like crews. But they're not like, it's not like Run DMC and like they're all 4 of them performing together. It's like they have like a crew, but then each person in that crew has their own solo thing. So like, but with that also comes that hip hop, sorry, if you had the type of subject matter in hip hop, which I'm not even going to get into like the cliche stuff, but even just the baseline level of ego that goes into the average hip hop verse, it's like if there was any other genre of music, like a country song or like a indie pop song that was literally just talking about how fucking awesome you are, how many bitches you fuck, how much money you make, how dope your life is, and how dope
like,
the person listening to this isn't. It's like that only flies in that genre. You can't even picture like.
Well, let me ask you: what about like the '80s glam rock or like heavy metal?
Heavy metal flirted with it, but like they were more like it was
more like self-hatred, like unleashing the darkness within.
I'm glad you said that because I was gonna say it was almost like they like. The closest you can get to it with rock is you can talk about how much sex you have and how much drugs you do, but you kind of have to do it coming from an angle of like, but I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't fuck as much as I did. Like this lifestyle has brought me nothing but depression. It's
like running with the devil. Like there's like a sadness.
There's not a lot of just like, dude, I fuck so many bitches. I do so much coke, and my life is awesome. Yours isn't, and we are Motley Crue.
Right.
Like I guess in a way there are times that they do talk like that, girls and stuff, but it's much less common,
right
as compared to hip hop. And so like I think that a lot of that comes from the fact that these in hip hop are primarily solo artists. And I think in order to be a solo artist, you have to buy yourself as a brand. You have to like, it's easy to be in a band. I think easier since I've done both and been unsuccessful at both. It's easier to like take something that's like you, but it's a separate thing from you. It's like a separate entity. Like Live from the Studio podcast is me and Eric, but that makes it easier for me to sell it because it's like 1 degree of detachment. It's like, it's not just me. It's a thing that I'm heavily involved in that I can now look at as a separate brand and push that without feeling like I'm pushing myself too much.
Right. That's the embarrassment that it comes with stand-up also, because it just feels like an extremely egotistical thing.
Yeah, you're pushing yourself.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do.
Right.
If you're not an egomaniac.
Right. And see, well, I'm a self-loathing egomaniac. Like all of myself, I'm still focused on myself, but a lot of it is like the hating myself part of it. But it's like, I know that I am called to do stand-up because I hate it. It's like so fucking cringy and embarrassing to like put yourself out there in the spotlight and be like, I can hold the attention of a room. I can make people laugh. I am an entertainer. And telling people that you do stand up in the muggle world, as I call it, is just like so humiliating. Well, but I just feel like I have to.
It is weird when you even get in, because like, you know, to have a conversation about ego in the context of art, which is inherently kind of this compulsion to put yourself out there, like express yourself to other people and try to get people to listen constantly. I mean, that's all art is. You make music, you want people to listen to it. You do stand-up comedy, you want people to laugh, you want people to be at the shows, you want people to listen to it. And it's like, it is kind of it's like kind of like when they talk about like when somebody's running for president and they're like, oh, he has a big ego. It's like, dude, don't you imagine being a human being and going, dude, see this country of 330 million people, you know who should run that shit? Me. Like, you can't not kind of have an ego if you think that you should be the leader of the free world. Now, having an ego...
That's the appealing thing about Trump I could see, is that he didn't hide his ego.
And people said, well, when I say people, I mean Socrates.
Yeah.
Ancient Greek philosophers have postulated that, like, you know, the best people to be in those positions of leadership are people who don't want the best people to be in positions of power are people who don't want that power.
Yes, that's why in mythology or in like Harry Potter and stuff, it's always the concept of the chosen one. Someone who prophecy basically like dictated had to undergo this journey. Because if you wanted to just save the world, if you thought that you were capable, if you chose to do that on your fucking own, you're just like total egotistical dick. Like nobody's gonna root for that guy.
But that's also what's weird about art, is because no one really has come up to us and been like, dude, we need you to make music. It's like, it's this
yes, you know,
proclaimed destiny.
Yes, the people have, because you were just telling me a story about your bassist or about whoever that guy is, and he saw you perform at a bar and he approached you and said, I need you to make me a rock star.
Sure. Okay.
He needed you.
Okay, sure. and this is me attempting to kind of like just play basically the devil's advocate against the idea of art and egoism. Is like, it's hard to differentiate between a compulsion that is egotistical or just, I don't know what the other word for it would be to describe it in the other way. But it's like, I always looked at it as like, again, going back to the ancient Greek philosophers, Socrates and Plato, my boys, they, when they talked about what morality is, which was the entire kind of question of the Republic. The Republic was, I think, probably his most famous dialogue. That was where they had like the allegory of the cave or like shadows on the wall and stuff. But
now it's the allegory of the man cave.
And they had this kind of, the burning question was, what is morality? And kind of the conclusion, there wasn't really a final conclusion, but the conclusion they drew nearest to was that morality is every person doing what they do best, like doing their job. And so I think with art, you kind of have to believe that you're good at it in order to feel that compulsion to do it.
Well, let me just get, is it the belief that you're good at it, or is it the belief that you're doing good by doing it? That you're conveying like a message, or that you're bringing some kind of light to other people to receive.
Sure. But even that's a great question. But even from there, the belief that you're doing good is in other words saying like, dude, whatever it is that's emanating from inside of me, other people need this, which means that you on some level believe that your message, your truth is important enough that you need to spend your time getting it out there. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just, it is a reality of art, and there are ways to do it from an ego, and there are ways to do it from humility. But that's like kind of the tightrope. And that's kind of why I think a lot of people like yourself and people that are more level-headed have a harder time.
I'm definitely not level-headed, but
well, I mean, like, I think people that I mean, like, more grounded in their perception of themselves, sometimes for better or for worse, whether you think you're worse than you are, you just are just like, dude, I think I'm good. But like, from that standpoint, it's hard because so much of that initial startup of anything is, the branding aspect.
Right.
And so many people, when I was first starting to kind of like become a musician, get into the business or whatever, that was like the first thing they always tell you is like, well, what's your image? What's your brand? And it's hard to ask someone who's been themselves their entire life to tell, who are you? In one sentence or less, who are you? What's your brand? And you're like, I don't know. I just am me. Right. And that's a really hard thing to sell. It's kind of the difference between when you look at podcasts and you're like, oh, what's that podcast about? It's like, oh, there's these guys who like, eat different types of cereal. And it's like, at least, okay, maybe that's not going to appeal to the broad market, but at least the people that are obsessed with cereal, it's very easy to get them because it's like, versus when you come on and be like, our podcast, we just kind of talk about random whatever's going on that week. That's a way harder thing to sell.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not already like a name or something.
Like, okay, I'll give an example. My girlfriend works down in Miami for an artist. I'm not going to say his name. But he is very successful. And has multiple galleries all around, is selling paintings for like $75,000, $80,000 a pop.
Whoa.
Insane.
Is she an artist?
She's like an artist assistant. She like, what's funny about this situation is she basically does all the work. He comes up with the concept. The concept is, and anybody who's familiar with modern art might be able to pick out who I'm talking about, but because you've definitely seen it, it's like basically like a collage of stuff in like a background, and then there's like a phrase. Could be like keep calm or like, something else. Any like short little phrase in like very solid lettering, and then you pull off the lettering and the letters are out of the collage. If I showed you a picture of it, you'd instantly be like, yeah, I've seen stuff like this. But basically with modern artists especially, so much of their what I've perceived it to be is like, you get like one thing that's your thing, and you just keep replicating it over and over again.
Right.
So it's like, there's a guy that just paints signs, spray paints signs, and that's his thing. He just spray paints signs. Well, at a certain point, once you've figured out what it is you're going to do, then he can just tell my girlfriend, okay, I need to cut out this many pictures of like this kind of stuff, glue them together, and then he just signs it at the end. Because it's, and so like, but then he had this idea where he was going to do this thing where he's going to have like a limited edition of like gold blocks, right? which all they are is wood blocks, spray painted gold with like a unique number engraving. There was like 1,000 of them. So he was going to sell them for like multiple thousands of dollars. And like people actually fucking bought them.
Wow.
And it's like literally, it's like the reality of brand.
But they're not buying like a Micah student's like art that they like poured their heart and soul into. Yeah.
The problem, and this is, I'm coming at it from like 6 different angles, but what I've kind of realized about marketing is it's the same way that fashion works. You could take the same shirt that doesn't have the word Supreme stapled across it or whatever, and it'll sell for $12 at Walmart. Mm-hmm. Once you put it out as a limited edition, this, that, the third, you could sell that same shirt for multiple hundreds of dollars.
Am I limited edition because I'm suicidal? Why don't you guys find me appealing?
And like the reality is, most people, the reason why they want that Gucci purse is not because the actual build of the purse
it's better, shitty. It's like
is better than any other bag you could get. I'm saying purse like I'm 98 years old. Gucci bag or whatever. It's because when you have that word Gucci on your bag, it says to other people, I have the money to blow on this frivolous thing.
Right.
And so it's an elevation of your own status. And so when you get big enough to be a brand, then you can sell whatever the fuck you want. Kind of like how Taylor Swift tickets, Taylor Swift's been around since 2006.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, people are taking out mortgages to go see her in concert in the past 2 years. It's like, what the hell happened? She's been around for 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, like what the fuck happened? And what it is like these waves of things happen. People get obsessed with the brand. And if you're egotistical enough to know that that's how people perceive you and to buy your own hype, to also believe in your own hype, then that's the kind of person that would go, fuck it, dude, I'll just get a bunch of wood blocks, spray painted gold. Motherfucker's going to buy that shit. A person like you or I could never do that because we don't take ourselves seriously.
Right.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Wager.
Right. But see, I can understand though the point of like where you're keep manufacturing something that works. Like that's the point. And I haven't been doing that much stand up lately, unfortunately, but where I'm at with my stand up where I know I have sort of formula to my jokes, but they work. Mm-hmm. And like lately when I've been doing like sets at shows, like I am like crushing, I'm getting like a really good response, but other people, like other comedians tell me like, oh, you know, you need to get up there and you need to play around. You need to do crowd work. You need to do this and this and this. It's not enough to just go up there and tell your jokes. That's easy. And I'm just like, you guys have no idea, like the level of anxiety and everything that I feel, like getting up on here in the fucking first place, like isn't easy. Like, and I've never been like a comic that can just like get up on stage and riff with people. I mean, I hope to be that way one day, but it's like my jokes come from within my own darkness. I spend time writing. Like it's obvious that I'm a writer. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, first of all, I think the best, there's comedic voice. I've heard people describe it as comedic tone. I like that because as a musician, I relate to kind of like guitar tone. You play the same thing through your guitar, but depending on what kind of amplifier you have, what kind of guitar you have, what kind of pedals you're working with, what your rig's like, you have like a totally different kind of sound that you kind of curate over time to become your own sound.
Right.
And like as a comedian, it's like, look, you want to be comfortable in your own skin, obviously. But if it's not a natural thing to you to just go, if you're not the person in regular life who's just fucking walking up to people and riffing and just making small talk conversation, you don't have to be that person on stage. Because look, I look at it almost the opposite way. I see guys like, you know, not to shit on anybody specifically, but, you know, more known guys like Big J. Okerson, who I have respect for as a successful comedian. He's not my style of comic. Because he leans so heavily on the crowd work that almost feels like a cop-out. Because it's okay, you're a naturally funny person. You know how to bullshit with people, and that's great. But, like, in my opinion, the art of stand-up comedy is that kind of, like, Seinfeld-y, Louis C.K.-esque level of writing and just getting to the point of a certain issue that may or may not, especially with Louis, because Seinfeld kind of just walks the safe line, you know, and just kind of just does like observational shit. But like when you can take a thing and like truly express your opinion on that thing in your voice in a very concise manner, in a way that is replicable and resonates with people, that to me is the true art of stand-up comedy versus fluffing up your set with 35 minutes of, so how long you guys been dating? So tell me, how many days? Did you fuck on the first night? How big's his dick? It's like, okay, yeah, you can do that, but like, I can do that.
Well, see, and then that's the thing, like a lot of comics that are like popular on TikTok or popular in social media are posting their crowd work, but not necessarily the jokes that they use because they're not writing consistently or they have the set that they stick with. Like they're not revealing like their actual jokes.
Well, I mean, in reality, posting a clip of your crowd work is the same as posting a random clip from your podcast.
True.
Because a podcast is a free-flowing conversation. You sift through however many hours you recorded on that particular episode. You find the 1-minute clip that you think is funny.
Like a while ago, like I did like something, a line I came up with during the podcast where I was just talking about how the acronyms in LGBT, like that's how I'm teaching my kids the ABCs. And it's been like working. So this is actually like a really good exercise to like bounce ideas back and forth and just come up with something. But yeah.
It's why comedians I mean, if you think about it, podcasting now has become a comedian-dominated industry. And it didn't necessarily have to be that way. Like, there's nothing inherent about a podcast that says, oh, yeah, this is something that stand-up comedians are primarily going to do. It just so happened that podcasting was a thing that resonated because with the first podcast, you know, there was Serial and shit like that. But now, and there's still podcasts like that, but it almost seems like every stand-up comedian has a podcast, which is not a bad thing. But it's such a very good conductor for the inner working of a stand-up comedian, which is just kind of like trying stuff out, talking about shit, and not having the pressure of every single premise or every single topic having to be a well-crafted joke.
Right. And then that's the angle where I messed up from the beginning, but now I feel more comfortable just like not necessarily knowing what we're going to talk about and just like letting shit, flow.
I mean, this is where you find it versus maybe 30 years ago, it was a bunch of guys in the green room. And I hate when you can tell a stand-up comedian is trying a joke on you. I hate that. It's so just like cringe to me. It's like, when somebody tries to show you a video on their phone, that's one level of cringe. It's like, dude, okay, just send me the fucking link. I'll watch on my own time. I'm not going to sit here over your shoulder while there's people talking and try to listen to this funny video and not really be in the place to do it. The level above that is when you can just tell a comic's like trying a bit.
Yeah,
and you're like, all right, now I have to laugh, or at least like now I have to like give feedback in regular conversation. Whereas in a regular conversation, it's like if somebody says something that's not that funny, you throw them a pity laugh and move on.
Oh, that's the worst. I hate bombing in conversation more than I hate bombing on stage. But
bombing in conversation sucks, but all the real ones do it because if you're not trying.
Right. That's what Patrice O'Neill said. He's like, you're not funny if you've never like bombed, if you've never tried hard enough.
Yeah, you have to, because I mean, it's like, look, and for instance, like I probably bomb so much more on the podcast with Eric. Eric, his like word to hit ratio is amazing. Because I do about 80% of the talking, probably more on that podcast. But when he comes in, it's good, versus me, I just kind of fuck. You
guys are like Bert Kreischer and like Louis. Like that podcast was like fucking like hilarious. It's just like Bert is like hysterical, just like a personality and so open and stuff. And like Louis just sits back and is just like, yeah. But like Eric hasn't really even been doing comedy that much lately, has he? It's like. He's mostly just been doing like production stuff, right?
Yeah, I haven't. I've been kind of wondering what's going on with that, and like.
But you guys are a good contrast too, because like you have like that fiery energy, and he's like the more he tethers it like. To the
totally,
ground.
and like I think that he's kind of at a place with comedy, and I'm just speaking from like my outside perspective. I just feel like he's
happy and doesn't need the validation.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I think that he knows he's a funny person.
Yeah.
The podcast is a good outlet once a week to come on and just fucking be funny and talk about shit that's going on and like get your jokes in. And like, I don't think he feels the need to do. I think this happened to a lot of comics during COVID, where like they kind of got that break. Where like it's very easy to, and you saw this all across the board, not just with comedy, but with musicians, with restaurants. I mean, how many restaurants were open 24/7 before COVID? And now that things are open back up completely again, those restaurants are not back to 24/7. I think it's like, I kind of had a similar experience when I was playing at the Horse You Came In on every Sunday night from 9:30 to close, 1:30 in the morning, 9:30 to 1:30 in the morning, every Sunday. Solo, a lot of times it would be like a decent crowd when I first got in, but it's a Sunday. Most people are out of there by, 10:30, whatever. And then it's kind of like hit or miss, a crapshoot if it's going to be any type of crowd later on in the night. It was just kind of like, but because I was just so in the just routine of doing it, I didn't realize how much I truly wasn't enjoying it after a while. Like I didn't realize how much of like a low level dread I was feeling every Sunday morning, going out to brunch with my friends and having a good time. And now it's 4 and I'm like 7 mimosas in and I'm having a great time. And then we're watching the Ravens game and it's like blah blah blah. And then around 8 p.m. it's like, dude, I gotta sober up.
But can you imagine your younger self looking at you like when you were first starting out and imagining like how you could ever dread that?
Yeah, exactly.
When you first started.
And and it's like it's funny you say that because I was thinking about that kind of like earlier today, leaving the gym, and I was thinking like, I was thinking about exactly this, like how I used to do these gigs, and now you literally couldn't pay me. I mean, obviously there's a number, but like the number that I would charge is not any number that I would actually get. Yeah. Like I was doing it for $150. I couldn't even think of a number off the top of my head. I guarantee you they wouldn't agree to it for me to do every Sunday. And that's no shade to them or to anybody. It's just a reality. Like I enjoy playing. They're just not on fucking Sunday nights every Sunday. And like, but when COVID hit, it actually hit that morning. It was a Sunday morning. When it was right before they shut everything down because they shut things down on that Monday. But that Sunday, the Horse decided to close early. And I got a text from the bar manager saying, hey, we're closing early because of this whole COVID thing, so no gig tonight. And I was like, it kind of felt like a snow day. And at the time, of course, you're thinking things will be back any day now. Maybe I'll probably be back next week, whatever. Nobody knew it was going to be like that. But then after a couple months and stuff like that, when it came back, I was thinking, dude, there's no way I'm re-agreeing to go do this again. I had kind of been doing it because I already had it and I didn't want to lose it because it was a steady guaranteed $150 every week, that I couldn't justify in my own mind just not doing it.
Shit, that's my child support payment every month.
Well,
I'll do Sunday.
But like, it's amazing how once you get taken out of the mix, you kind of have this zoomed out perspective and you're like, oh wait, I actually really didn't enjoy that thing. I did enjoy those things. So it's kind of like, speaking of Louis C.K., I was listening to old Opie and Anthony clips, which I actually don't really do that often.
I fucking love that. That's one of my influences.
Yeah. And they were talking about marriage or something, and Louis had this joke, I think it was Louis, where he did this joke like, marriage would be better if it was like, instead of like a forever contract, it was like a re-up like every 5-10 years. Like every 5-10 years, you come to the end of your contract and you're like, all right, like it's time for us to renew. Like you kind of like it's like, and I thought about that. I was like, actually, yeah, because how many people are just stuck in relationships they're not happy with, but just they don't really. It's a big effort to get out of a serious relationship.
Yes.
It's like a whole.
Oh, don't I fucking know it?
It's same thing with apartments. It's like, every year around November, my brother and I have to have a conversation and be like, are we renewing the lease? Otherwise, it's just day to day waking up and just living your life. But then because every year you kind of have to reconsider, are we still going to live here? Is this still the best place to live? Is this the best price? It forces you to kind of like reconvene. And I think going back to Eric and comedians and stuff, I think with him, I think he was in the habit of doing that kind of like classic circuit, just going around doing mics everywhere. And I think once everybody was taken out of it, I think he got a chance to zoom out and be like, all right, yeah, I love comedy, but I don't need to be doing that. I don't need to be. And I'm saying this because I can't imagine he would disagree.
Oh no, I just noticed like from listening to your guys' podcast that he's like, so like you both are very hilarious and stuff and bounce really good off each other. And, Liz is still doing it, his girlfriend, and he's still
very involved. I mean, he and Joey at ATV Productions, they're the ones doing the shorts with Stavi. Like they're he's very involved in comedy, and I think that and like I'm sure he still does stand up.
Yeah,
like he does his hot set show. And like, I think that's actually a cooler place to be when, you're comfortable enough. Financially is the biggest thing, but nobody's really, making their bones off local comedy in Baltimore. So that's not a factor.
Right.
But just like with your own personal fulfillment and validation and happiness to be like, look, I enjoy doing comedy as a thing that I do when I want to do it.
Right.
It's not, I no longer look at it as this thing that I have to, I'm not like grinding, you know,
Right,
and that's
right.
okay. That's okay.
Right. I mean, I'm at the place where it's like every time I do a set and it goes well, it's like a drug infused in my blood where I can't like sleep. And it's just a matter of the financial part that's keeping me from getting out there and doing it. And it's just like a lot of these people, I'm not trying to start or talk shit or anything like that, but it's like this one, you know, popular club around here. It would cost money for me to get there. So it's like, why would I show up not being guaranteed a spot?
Yeah. Yeah. See,
And it's a cool kids club. And I know I'm a fucking unhinged mess on social media, but aren't them like, can you imagine if like Sam, I think I talked about this with like before, but if like Sam Kinison had social media back in the day, can you imagine if, you know, what was his name? Like, fucking Richard Pryor had social media, just like what hot ass messes they would be. But they were the funniest motherfuckers alive. And I'm not saying I'm anywhere near their level or anything like that, but I've earned my fucking keep around here. And nothing's happening and it's like I have to start putting in my time in DC and New York, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. And it's like, look, the reality is, and this again is for just about anything, not just unique to comedy, but it's you kind of, you know, we all grow up with the Hollywood version of success. You watch a movie, you watch a documentary about some band you like, and they always, you know, when you consolidate someone's story to 1.5 hours with commercials for something, you know, I'm talking old school, like when you're watching the thing on TV. Remember TV, people? Television channels. You kind of, you know, it kind of creates this image in other people's minds that like you're just like a guy working at a bar, polishing a glass, and some guy walks in and he's like talking to some other guy and he's like, man, I can't believe that guy canceled tonight. It's unbelievable. He's sitting at the bar. He's like, barkeep, we'll get 2 whiskeys. And the guy walks over and man, the bartender's just in the background polishing a glass, and the 2 guys in their suits unbuttoned are sitting at the bar. Man, it's like, how is he going to cancel last minute? Who are we going to put on stage tonight that's going to fill these seats? And the bartender's like, I'll do it.
Yes,
and then boom, then he goes up and he fucking kills, and it's like, that was where I made it. It's like, that's not real life. Real life is this gradual just putting in your time with zero validation.
Real life is like your Greek father, like keeping you trapped in a room, like making you practice, like giving like you're gonna be the best singer, Jimmy. Like,
do you know how long? And I'm asking this question honestly because I don't know, because I'm still not at the other part where you actually get validation. Do you know how long it takes some people of putting in this, just doing your thing over and over again with zero feedback or validation from the universe or whatever you want to call it, God, that you're even doing something that is worth your time?
Yeah.
And it's like, you just kind of have to just do it. And if you're good, you have to that's where kind of faith comes in. And it really is. It's like, you just do your thing. And the bigger takeaway from this is you have to do it for yourself, because no one's else going to do it for you.
Yes.
You know, that's anything in life. Nobody else is going to go out and get you a girlfriend. Nobody else is going to go out and pay your rent. I mean, unless you're a super hot girlfriend.
Right, exactly.
But anything in life, you're the one that has to do it for yourself. And like, look, you know, whenever you're relying on anyone else, and it's good, like there's a difference between relying on somebody versus just like working with people.
Exactly. Like this podcast, like I wouldn't have anywhere near this level of equipment without, you know, coming
but
to your
that's not
studio
reliance or dependence.
Right. But it's working together, you know.
It's like if you had the idea that you wanted to do a show, you'd be doing this show if I never existed. You know, it wouldn't sound as good.
yeah. Alone in my room, like
the
my TikTok
cameras would be
videos.
lower definition. You know, but maybe not. I don't know. Who knows that alternate timeline? But what I'm saying is like, you kind of have to be like, look, I'm going to do this gig. Like I used to like not take gigs if people in my band couldn't do that gig. And then I was like, wait a second, this is my job. That's not their job. If they can't make this gig, that's great. I'll find somebody else to play drums. And no, obviously I want my bandmates to be at that gig, but I can't not take work because somebody else can't do the job.
Right.
Unless a person comes up and is like, we specifically want sophomore, you, John Joe. Other than that, it's like, I'm going to hit up John and Joe first to be like, yo, can we do this? And if one of them says they can't do it, I'm going to take that gig.
Yeah.
Regardless. Because
Exactly.
I can't rely on anyone. And I would say I wouldn't want them relying on me. It's like the same thing.
Here I go on the road again. Here I go. Yeah, so I was just listening to that Metallica, the Metallica version, but yeah. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, this is the area that I'm at right now in stand-up, and what I'm doing here is just I feel like a fucking rogue. I feel completely by myself when I used to kind of have like my crew. And it's a freeing, liberating feeling, but it's also extremely lonely.
Well, I think that, look, in reality, and I realize it's just with music too, just there are more opportunities. And it's not even necessarily more opportunities, like there's more opportunities in DC. It's just like there's always more opportunities everywhere than there is in one place.
Right.
And so, like, if you're branching out and going like, look, I'll take the shows I can get in Baltimore, but I'm not limiting myself to Baltimore because now I'm limiting myself to what the people in this circle are willing to give me. And I'm not limiting myself to what everyone around me is saying I deserve. I'm going to go out, and if I can get only 1 or 2 spots in Baltimore, then I'm going to go out and get a couple more spots in DC, maybe drive up to Philly, maybe try to get my foot in the door in New York. And it's like, that's really how it's done.
Right.
I spent so much time wishing that Baltimore was just more of an established scene for anything. And the reality is we have a lot of talent here, and we have a lot of cool places and a lot of great people, but when you compare it to these other cities, it's not really on the same level.
Right.
And that's annoying. And
it's a great place to build your voice and to go through the fucking ringer.
Yeah.
To become like strong, or at least believe in yourself and believe that you
and
have
it's
what it
a great
takes.
place for that because there's no real serious place that like the doors are open pretty much anywhere around here if you can do something. But, whereas in New York, it's like you're not getting a spot at the Comedy Cellar unless,
Right.
I don't know that for a fact, but I'm assuming, you're not just some open micer that's, on a guest spot. You kind of have to prove something before you get those opportunities. But the good side of that is there's higher up to climb. The problem is it's like the ladder is further down to the ground in Baltimore to get your start, but it only goes up this high.
Exactly. And the fucking big fish, like I said on the podcast with Matt Brown, that were big fish 10 plus years ago when I started, even before my break, are still the big fish here now.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are a few exceptions, but it's like the people that I started with, half of them won't even like look me in the eye when I come in, even after I've had like a strong set. And it's like the newer people are like, oh my God, like I never see you. Or when I went to DC, like I'm not trying to brag on myself, okay? Like I fucking hate myself. But in Alex Starr's room, like I crushed. It was the first time that my mom said I had the best set of the night and I was funny. My mother, my Jewish cunt mother said this. And she said that she wished she would have gotten a third abortion. So but it's like.
Which reminds me, your mom is our third guest on the podcast today. Welcome.
Oh yeah, she will be.
Mrs. Kelly.
The 2 guests I'm manifesting this year are my mother and then my ex, my kid's father. That's yeah. But it's just in the Bible, even, or in the Torah rather, it says like you must run from your father's house. Basically, that means it's just like at a certain point, you bring you can't spread your light to like where you were born, or people won't be receptive to it.
Interesting.
It's like they'll look at you like a fucking fraud or a fake because they just remember you when you started.
That is some excellent Jewish wisdom. Holy crap, dude!
I've been reading the Kabbalah and
Do you
stuff
guys
lately,
have fortune lockers? Because that would be such a good little thing to pull out. I love that, and I love the way it's phrased because I do feel like a lot of times, like I'm even apprehensive to even just move downtown just because of my parents' view. They grew up in the city, and like
totally should.
A big thing with Baltimore boomers is that they are not big fans of the city now. And if I were to get a place down there, they may be like, oh, you're gonna move down there, all that bullshit, car's gonna get broken into, and blah blah blah. But you gotta do it, you gotta learn, you can't just fucking take somebody's advice. You gotta go down there and figure it out for yourself. So go ahead. And it's like, okay, sure. And it's like, look, do I have a need to? No, because I live off of 83. I can get anywhere in the city I need to in 20 minutes or less. And it's like, okay, great. But at the same time, it's like, I've also never lived anywhere else other than Towson my entire life. And I'm 30 years old.
Right.
And it's like, why not? You know, it's like, why not just not live in Towson?
Well, if your girlfriend, it seems like she has like in Miami and stuff like that, if she has like a prosperous like career or something, like would you move with her like out of state to like a bigger city?
Well, here's the thing. It's like, I don't really foresee myself leaving Baltimore. And that's only because it's like, I'd be leaving the podcast, I'd be leaving the band. And it's like, those are the two things that I consider my most valuable assets.
Yeah.
Fortunately and unfortunately in my life. And it's like, look, what am I going to move to New York and meet a better drummer, meet a better guitarist and songwriter? No, I don't think so. Am I going to move to New York and meet a better co-host? I don't think so. It's not about that. So like, I would stay in Baltimore just because it's like, I don't think I've peaked out here. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like I think another mistake people make with in this area is understanding that yes, there is a top here, and the top is lower than the top in New York or LA. But at the same time, that doesn't mean if you're a nobody that you should just move out to New York and just be like, all right, I'm just going to start there. And it's like, yeah, that works for some people. But I've always kind of looked at it in the way where it's like, well, if Baltimore is such a low tier city and you're so
I'm the
awesome,
low tier of the low tier. But that's the fucking shitty part, yes.
But it's like, look, if you're so awesome and Baltimore is so not awesome, then why aren't you the man in Baltimore?
Right.
Like, if I would look at it as like, yeah, I'd move to New York, I'd move to LA. Once I can move to New York and be like, yo, by the way, you've probably heard of us. We're like the biggest band in Baltimore. We have the #1 podcast in Baltimore. We're going up here. We're going to expand our operation because we've peaked out in our city. That seems reasonable to me. It doesn't seem reasonable to just move up and be another one of the nameless, faceless people who haven't really put in any of the work outside of just relocating. Because that's a big thing people do. It's kind of the same way people go to college. So many people like out of high school, they'll be like, oh, I'm going to go to college. And it's like, well, what are you going to do in college? I don't know. Go. And it's like, okay, so you go to college and then you get your degree, but it's like, okay, but like, that's only a part of the equation here. You know, like going to college in and of itself is not how you succeed. You have to like take a path. You have to take a direction. You have to network and all these other things that go into having a successful career. It's the same thing with show business. It's like, okay, like, yeah, you want to be an actor. You want to be a singer. You want to be a comedian. Okay, great. So you just think that by simply relocating to another city and doing the same bullshit you're doing here, that's going to bring you success? Because now what you've done is you've taken your ability to succeed and externalized it. Now you're relying on the city to make you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
like the same way we talk about not relying on people. It's like, I don't rely on Baltimore to reach my potential. I just look at it as like, this is the place that makes the most sense to me right now to be doing it. You know, other people are like, well, I'm not making it in Baltimore but it's like, are you doing everything you could be doing?
Right. And I'm definitely not. Like, it's no fault, but it's just like, why do it?
Yeah. So you want to move to New York and have the same shitty habits, have the same work ethic and all those other things. And then you just think that magically by changing your zip code, you're going to end up where you want to be. I'm sorry, that's not how it works.
But and I'm not trying to be, just in my case, just the defeating thing is having strong sets in front of showrunners around here. And then them saying things to me, like giving me false feedback and just like, that's the defeating part of it.
Well,
and it's just like, I have tried to prove myself and like nothing has really manifested from it.
Well, the other part of that equation, that Jewish wisdom you dropped on me. Now I understand why you guys are at the top. I mean, that's great. That's great.
We're at the top because we're lizard people.
You guys should run the world. I'm not saying you do, but you should. And I'm not saying you don't either.
And I'm a real Jew because my mom's Jewish. So yeah.
But like the other part that I really like about that, I don't know if that was part of the saying or just your interpretation of it, but when you said that like, you're never going to be, the people where you grew up are never going to receive your light because they're always going to see you for what you were. And this kind of circles back to everything we've talked about so far. The branding, everything. Because so much of what makes people really take off is when you've expanded outside of your circle of people that actually have a personal connection to you to know that you're a real person. So much of what being a celebrity or being a poppin' person is you're coasting off of people's image of you.
Right,
and it's hard
right.
for people to have an image of you if they know you personally. It's hard for people to take you seriously as this big time comedian, big time band when they're like, yeah, I went to middle school with that guy. He got suspended for throwing Old Bay in somebody's eyes. Like that's like, it's hard to like do that. So you almost kind of have to like, you have to have people that don't know you catch on, because those are the people that are going to be like, oh yeah, Sam Kelly, oh Jimmy Solesky, oh, it's like, yeah, you guys don't know that we were losers. You just know us who we are now.
Yeah.
And so there is an element of like, yeah, it is kind of hard when people have such a close relationship to you for them to ever see you as anything other than what you've been.
Right.
You know?
And it is so real, and I hate to say it, but people being jealous and then that negative energy like affecting you.
Well, yeah, there's that too. I mean,
and I'm not saying that's the case for me, but it's just, or even my non-comedian friends that I've burned bridges with recently, just being resentful, being like, oh, just because you think you got some local clout and da 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 da. It's like, this time last year, I was in the fucking psych ward.
Yeah.
Like,
And a lot of that too is just that kind of crabs in the bucket thing. Another great metaphor for this city is that, and it's every city, but because of Baltimore's relative size to these bigger cities, it's much more apparent and it's much more in your face, because there is this feeling in Baltimore that everyone feels that's trying to do something where like there's only room at the table for so many people. And so we're all kind of competing to be the best in Baltimore. And that means that like...
Who was the most popular guy at Christ's table? Look at what happened to him.
Oh, well, that's true too. I mean, well, besides Christ. And look what happened to him.
Exactly.
I mean, Jesus Christ. But like...
And it was one-sided.
There is an element of like, you know what I mean, though?
Yeah. No, totally. And it's just, I don't know. Again, I don't mean to sound like bitter and resentful, because in my heart, like I know what like I have to do. It's just so disappointing because I love this city so fucking much. Like it's me. It's like my spirit animal, this city. But as far as you moving to the actual city, like what part were you thinking, like Fells Point or
one of the
like,
classic 30-year-old white guy places to
like
move.
Hamden, Fells Point, Remington, or
I would say
Pigtown.
Fells,
That's where I got my shit stolen. Pigtown. I thought it was safe because it was not so. I'm not going to say that.
Not quite.
Pigtown. I thought there were cops all over the place.
Yeah. Turns out I was just I can't even say this joke.
It's pretty bad when you can't say it. Yeah.
I can't even say it.
Or you could go really
It was
white.
just a typo. Who knows?
Oh my god! Okay.
Come on, I had to say the joke. You know I don't mean it, but it's too in your face.
We'll edit
to
Matt
not say the
Brown's
joke.
face on top of yours, but
come on, man.
You could go really classic white and move like to Brooklyn Park. That's where my dad lives.
Oh, that's too classic white. That's a whole other level of white that I'm not prepared for.
Yeah.
I would probably move to like I guess Fells, Canton. I think I'm probably too old for Fed and it's not really quite my vibe. Maybe like Locust Point or something. I've thought about Hamden just because that would be probably the most convenient place to live, because it's right off 83.
Yeah, I love
I
Hamden.
could still get to the studio in 15 minutes and it wouldn't be a big issue. And it's just places like that. But Hamden's not really my vibe too. I'm not like one of those like crusty white people either. I don't really know, like, and it's weird because it's like
when you don't fit in, you're larger than life.
That's true. That's
those
true.
Are the people who
like if I wasn't from Towson, I would say Towson isn't my vibe, because I would picture it as just like all a bunch of college kids, which a lot of it is. And honestly, I think I'm one of the few just 30-year-old dudes that's just like casually just living in Towson, And so I probably wouldn't ever pick Towson as a place to move if it wasn't already where I grew up. So I kind of feel like I'm judging Canton by just my experience of like hanging out there a lot. I'm like, oh, am I like some trendy?
The last time I hung out in
person?
Canton, I was like in my mid-20s, and then my friend got date raped by a bunch of lacrosse players. They didn't roofie my drink though.
Did your friend go to Duke?
What? So she said, Samantha, what happened? Because I left early. She's like, I woke up in a hotel room with a bunch of lacrosse players. And I was like,
Uh-oh. Yikes.
Yeah, but again, it's like I was unrapeable. So that's my...
Well, I consider myself unrapeable as well. So maybe
Maybe you're right.
As a young, unrapeable male. Is that a voting demographic? He's doing polling well in the unrapeable demographic.
Incel. I should probably edit that, but yeah, that's like my last experience, I think, with Canton. Are there shows? I don't even know about comedy in Canton.
There's not. That's the other thing. It's like there's not a lot of like. It very much is like it's a kind of like bar culture, like, but not like a artsy type of culture. It's very much just like neighborhood inner circle.
I know you like together. That, but you are an artistic person.
That's kind of the issue.
So it's like
it's like, so I my spirit is bro. I have a bro spirit.
Right.
But more so, I have the artistic element where I'm not quite bro enough to just be like, yo, let me move to Fed. Because like I'll be the guy in Fed like drinking bombs with people and doing rumple shots, but also like humming into my phone like another song, and it's like you know what I mean? Like it's not quite all the way there. You know?
No, but I think that's like a beautiful thing, because it's like I am a comic, but at the same time I'm so sensitive and so emotional, and as a comic you're supposed to like mock everything and basically just treat everything as a joke, but like I treat everything as just like magic.
Yeah.
And that's gay. That's gay as fuck. And people like make fun of me for it all the time. But it's just like,
it's less gay being a girl and doing that. It would be so fucking gay as fuck if I was like that.
Right. But okay, like one of my favorite magicians of all time, an artist, and we were talking about image, and this is someone who constantly hide between an ever like evolving image of himself, is David Bowie. And he adopted these personas because as like a way of sort of like performing magic on stage, but also just because he was so fucking shy and embarrassed of like putting himself out there that he hid behind these personas. But in comedy, I guess it's sort of hard to do unless you're like Larry the Cable Guy or something.
Yeah, the gimmick shit, it's like, you know, and this is all personal preference, but I feel like most people would agree that the comedians that we look at as the true greats, they weren't the Dice Clays, they weren't the Larry the Cable Guy, you know, people like that, you know, even like Jeff Dunham or any of the like the gimmicky type of acts. It's always the people that felt the most honest, the most true, and the most themselves. And I think that pretty much goes across the board, you know? And so, I don't know, as far as it pertains to your situation, I think like, you know, I don't know what is, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of things, but as far as what's tying you to Baltimore, but also
money,
money,
and my fucking kids,
money, kids, those are big things, obviously. But like, I think that we underestimate just how, like, if you're willing to put in the legwork of traveling and stuff, like, we are in one of the best areas in the country, really.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like I've talked about this before. I don't know about on your podcast, but just about every chance I get, I talk about how when I was driving down to Miami to drop my girlfriend off down there, we drove from Baltimore to Miami and down 95. And when we got into the top of Florida, we passed through Jacksonville, which is like the top of Florida on off 95. And I'm thinking like, yo, we just made it into Florida. We're pretty much there. And then I look at the map. We still got 5 hours to go. Right. And I'm thinking like, wow, holy shit. Like Florida is that big? I didn't realize, like, I'm thinking like Miami and Jacksonville, they're like probably the same fucking place, just a little bit different. Like, you know, like any two cities in a state would be. But then I get down, I'm driving and I realize like, yo, Baltimore is only like 3.5 hours from New York. Jacksonville is literally almost twice as far from Miami as Baltimore is from New York City. And Baltimore is like 1 hour from Philly. We're like 45 minutes from DC, you know, like I said, like Philly. Like the furthest major city up would be Boston, and that's like what, 8, maybe 7.5, 8 hours, which like that, I'm not saying that's convenient, but I'm saying like if you really look at like DC, Baltimore, Philly, just those three, I mean that's 3 major cities that were that are within like a 1.5 hour radius. Right. That you could be breaking into all those things without ever moving, you know, your house ever, you know?
I love Philly, and I love Philly comics. It's just like, and something about like Shane Gillis that I heard recently is just like he's really done a lot to improve the state of the comedy scene in Philadelphia. Like he's somebody who's really like given back. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not trying to shit on like the people, I won't mention them by name, who've kind of like made it from Baltimore, who are like on the rise, but it's not like the same thing here. It's just like, we're like, you're a fucking embarrassing like inbred cousin or something that you're like ashamed to admit like that you came from. But yeah, I mean, but you're absolutely right. I mean, and also you could just sit in your room and make art and anything's possible on the internet.
Well, that's the other big part of the equation we haven't touched upon yet. Is I think that this conversation is still very relevant, and it's still probably like more relevant than it isn't, but it's less relevant than it was 20, 30 years ago. Meaning that your physical location is less important now than it was. I would venture to say by far. I mean, I would say like you just said with social media and internet and TikTok and Instagram. And like comedians like to complain, you know, the purists complain about how there's like so many just like TikTok stars that are like comedians or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but that's a double-edged sword, because also you now have the opportunity to be a great stand-up comic in the middle of nowhere and catch on and be just as popular, if not more, than the best stand-up comedian in New York City or LA, you know? And so it's like we have this opportunity of social connection where I don't think it is as relevant to physically live where you want to make it, because I don't think there's any one place that you make it now like there used to be, which honestly is kind of more fuel to the fire of the previous point, which is you can live in Baltimore and not just isolate yourself to Baltimore opportunities. You can go up to Philly. You can go down to DC. You can once every couple of months or once every month or whatever, take the train up to fucking New York and get a spot up there. Like these are all things that are well within, 3 hours. And the time it takes to work half a shift at your fucking job, you could be up at New York to get a spot and back. And that's one day of work. If you figure out 8-hour workday for most people. It's like these are all things that are possible. You know, it's just a matter of what you're willing to do. And so, yeah, I guess that I always find myself talking myself out of ever leaving Baltimore. Probably out of like some type of like,
you don't have to leave. You can journey from Baltimore.
You can journey.
But a journey
Exactly.
means a return home, like the fucking hobbits.
Look,
Lord of the Rings.
Well, the reality is, I say this a lot. Sometimes I say this a lot sometimes, but you can only have one home. You can't be from everywhere.
Right.
And so many people, they want to be from New York. They want to be a New Yorker. They want to be from LA. And it's like, dude, first of all, LA in particular, there's not really any homegrown cult. I mean, there is.
Oh yeah, we could talk about the Met Gala after this.
Yeah, we'll get. That's a good segue. That is a good segue. But now that we're heading in that direction, let's focus in on LA.
Yeah.
Is that where the Met Gala is?
I'm not sure exactly. I know like Carl.
I thought it was in New York.
Like, yeah, but it's like LA, New York. I mean, New York has a little bit more of edge than like LA does.
New York, because so much of New York culture is also Jersey and all that shit. It's like that kind of like Guido. And there's so many people that are from New York that live in New York. There are people from LA that live in LA, but so much of LA is transplants, which means that not everyone, obviously, but such a
transplant sounds like a slur for like a vegan.
Yeah. Transplant. So there's such a significant population of people that are just from somewhere else that moved to LA chasing
But God damn it. Okay, like lately I've been listening to Lana Del Rey, and like what she sings about, like, I'm on the beach in LA. Are you gonna be my lover tonight? I'm like, yes, like I want to be like Lana Del Rey, like on the fucking beach in Santa Monica. Like, yes, like I want to be like.
Then you go to Santa Monica and you realize it's a fucking pier with a beach.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, Ocean City's way bigger than this. Ocean City's got rides, like real roller coasters. We got 140 streets of this shit. What's Santa Monica doing? You got one long pier. You got one long pier and a 10-mile wide beach that there's 4 people on any given fucking day. It's like so much of that is like, it's like, I don't know if you've ever been to like Hollywood. You've been to Hollywood?
Like but it's like, it's a shithole. I mean, and this was before I even did stand up.
It's a joke. I literally out loud, not to be funny, when I went there for the first time when I was 19 years old with my friend Scott, we were just homeless for a week out in LA. And now we would fit right in, but in 2011 it was a thing.
Yeah.
And we go out there and we get to Hollywood, and I was like, this is Hollywood? Because you spend your entire life, again, this goes back again to the branding thing, because it's the same way, like, Hollywood would have never been Hollywood if it was just trying to be Hollywood to the people in LA. Because the people in LA would be like, yeah, I know Hollywood. It's right there. It kind of sucks.
Right.
It has to be, it becomes Hollywood when you have the people out in Maryland and
there is a Hollywood, Maryland.
Yeah, and there is a Hollywood casino, Maryland. Arguably just as good. Arguably just as nice. But like, because I'm out with no familiarity to actually what it is, I'm just picturing Hollywood as this Disneyland of like amazing frills and flams and celebrities everywhere. And because of that, that's the branding. And so you have this weird distorted image of what it is, but then you go there and you realize, oh wait, this is just Hollywood. But that's what you realize. It's like, that's how people see you.
Yeah,
because that's what taking off is. It's when somebody who doesn't know that you're just a fucking shitty 3 blocks in the middle of LA and goes, dude, that's fucking Hollywood.
Yes.
That's Sam Kelly. That's live from the studio. Holy shit. Because you don't know me, motherfucker. If you sat down and talked to me for 2 hours, I guarantee you wouldn't be as big of a fan.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. But yeah, But is there a part of you that kind of like falls in love with like the clout, or that gets a rush out of it? Or
I think when I was younger, I used to just have this vague idea of I knew I wanted to do music, and I didn't really know what I wanted other than like I want to be famous. Mm-hmm. And it's like that's such a weird goal because it's like I want to be famous. Uh-huh. It's like, okay, how? Why? You know, like, and it's like now, I mean, as far as like the clout, I think more so, first of all, I don't have nearly enough clout to even say like, here's how I handle it. It's like, but in the minor, like in the past 10 years, I've obviously grown my operation to a point where like, you know, like to a point where like I can maybe go into a bar and be like, yeah, I play here, and there's a certain level of legitimacy to it where more doors open because of the doors you've already opened for yourself. Let's put it that way. And so in any degree of like that on an exponential level as you progress through your career, I almost kind of feel like I would fall more into the when people describe like imposter syndrome and stuff like.
That means you're talented, though. People that have imposter syndrome are usually talented people.
Well, sure. I mean, I guess. I guess that would make sense. I think that there are talented people that don't have imposter syndrome. I think more so people that have imposter syndrome are self-aware, and because not only did I go to middle school with myself, not only did I grow up with myself, I am myself. And so no one really knows me on a more intimate level than I know myself. And therefore, it would be very hard for me to ever buy into the idea that I'm whatever people might see me as, you know, other than like, oh yeah, he's a good dude. You know, fun to hang out with, whatever, good playing music and stuff. Like that's how I see myself. Like, I don't think I suck. I'm not going to sit here with false humility and be like, I'm not even, I do believe I'm good at music. I do believe I'm good with like the things that I do. And, but that's
and also
the extent.
You're like a Leo, right? So it's like you're born, and I know you have the astrologies, but Leos are born to shine, are born to perform. You're almost doing yourself like a disservice by not being like a light. That's one way of angle, the astrological angle. Sure. I know so many Leos that are like performers and stuff, and they're usually like the most, you know, like charismatic people, that like magnetic people that just are natural leaders.
I feel like the more, and this is all hypothetical, you always run the risk of sounding, you know, delusions of grandeur here, but let's just say hypothetically that I were ever to, or like I personally was ever to like get any level of actual notoriety. I think the more fame or clout I got, the less interested I would be in it. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't like the fact that people know who I am and that they actually respect what I do, but that would be the main thing. It would be the validation of knowing that all the hours of everything I've done and worked towards is actually kind of coming to fruition. But the actual like the celebrity of it and the you know, again, this perception that other people would have of me, I would find it exhausting to constantly live up to that and be that guy. So
you wouldn't be like Machine Gun Kelly wearing like your girlfriend's blood around your neck?
No,
and shit,
absolutely
and like...
not. I don't resonate with that type of shit ever. I think that like it kind of says to me, when you are doing that kind of shit, it's like there's no way that if you weren't out in public, this is how you would dress, which tells me that you're putting on an act. You're being something, you're being who other people want you to be. You're being what other people expect you to be. And
what if you're doing like me and you're being the exact opposite of what people want or expect you to be, and you're just being like a total fucking mess?
If you just naturally happen to be the opposite of what people want you to be, then that's just being yourself. You know?
But it's somehow getting some kind of attention, but it's like not, in a positive way, maybe. But
the reality is, anybody can be different. It's very easy to be different. I used this example on the last podcast or 2 podcasts ago. I could go outside right now, get naked, run out in the middle of York Road, and I'd get a lot of attention. It would turn some heads. It doesn't take any skill. It doesn't take any creativity. All it takes is a willingness to, basically, it takes a lack of shame and a need, a desire for approval and validation and attention that knows no bounds.
Right.
So yeah, you can put on this act and you can buy into your own gimmick. But that's I feel like that would get fucking exhausting to be like. I find it hard enough even when like the few people that do even come out to see me play, and because I'm on such a small level, like I have personal relationships with these people, so like because I've talked to them so frequently, I have it's like having your friends come out, it's not like a fan, although I guess it kind of is, because these are people that I only know because they come out to see me, so, but like, because it's such a few and far between, that like, I'm able to actually form personal relationships with these people. I find it like I would be constantly, I had an experience a couple weeks ago where a guy who saw me playing, I forgot where he saw me playing, it was like somewhere down in like Howard County or something, and he's from Howard County. And he's come out to see me twice in the past year since then. The first time he came out, he came to Perennial in Towson. Now, we briefly spoke the first time I met him.
Did he literally come out like he's gay? Is that why like is he like you're super
well,
like
that's another guy. I have another guy who should come out. But again, it's like whatever. But like this particular guy, he came out like maybe 5 months after I first met him, when he first saw me playing, and he came out to Perennial. And he was there the whole time. I thought I kind of recognized him, but like, whatever. And then at the end of the set, the bartender comes up, bar manager's like, yo, that guy, whatever, says he came out to see you. He wants to know if you can do the song. And he was like, you know that guy? And I was like, where is he? And he pointed to him. He was like, he says his name is this. I was like, I don't know. So I was like, whatever, do the song. And then he comes up afterwards. He introduces himself. He's like, hey, I saw you back there. I saw you were playing here on Facebook, and I came out, decided to come see you.
Oh, wow.
I was like, cool. So we talked, and I was like, great. Then just a couple weeks ago, he came out and saw me at Ampersy. And again, it was like he looked familiar, but I've never really had a close enough interaction with this guy. And it's been 6 months in between that you kind of like, you make it vague, and you're like, you don't want to walk up and be like, hey, dude. And they're like, who are you?
Yeah.
So like, he was sitting there the whole time. I wound up sitting right next to him talking to my friend during my first break. Didn't say anything. He didn't say anything to me. I get back up, and then my second break, I sit right back next to him again. And then he finally turns and was like, hey, you sound good tonight, Jimmy. And I was like, oh. And he was like, yeah, man, it's blah, blah, blah. I saw you. I was like, oh, shit. And so then it's like, now I feel bad because you've come out to see me twice now, and I sat directly next to you and didn't even fucking say anything.
No, don't feel bad. That's like a fan.
But that's what I'm saying. It's such a hard place to be in. And it's also very cool on his part, because, he's not looking at
Even though you're like a good looking dude, you grew up fat, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's all this is like coming from. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not
you can't just accept the attention or like the praise.
I'm not used to people wanting to associate with me unless we are directly interacting. Nobody wants to associate with me from afar. And, so like we wind up talking, and now I'm like buying him shots because I am truly expressing my appreciation for how much it truly does mean to me that someone enjoys me as a musician enough to come out and enjoy me as a musician and not have any other ulterior motives. Like they're not like a gay guy or something secretly wants to fuck me or something like that. It's like, this is just a chill dude. It's like, yeah, man, like I go out, like we were going to go, my friend was talking about maybe go out on Fells and talking about seeing this band. And I was like, dude, we should definitely go because this guy Jimmy's playing at Ampersy right beforehand. So I came out by myself to see you, and I'm going to meet up with him down at Cat's Eye after. I'm like, that's fucking sick, dude. And so we're fucking chatting and buying shots, and I'm almost probably being too personal because I think he was sitting next to a woman that he was probably trying to hit on. And I'm sitting there still feeling like I need to like talk to him and stuff. Eventually I was just like, I just kind of just walked away and was like, hey man, good seeing you. But like that, I couldn't imagine how I'd handle it when that's when you're actually playing shows and stuff, and like more people are like that than are your personal friends, and now I would just have this feeling of like personal responsibility to personally engage and express my gratitude to every single person. And it's like I literally, at the end of that night, I went home and I was trying so hard to find him on Facebook so I could message him and be like, hey, by the way, like, sorry I didn't recognize you at first. Because I couldn't do that if there were 1,000 people coming out. And I feel like it would be, my nature would not work well with it. I would have to like relearn some aspects of things. But that is a reality of, if you do make it to that level, that's what it becomes. You know?
Right.
So.
I mean, that's why it's like I've never been a fan of Ellen DeGeneres or anything like that. But like when the rumors came that she's like a bitch or something, it's like, can you just imagine the anxiety of like dealing with that much like attention every day and like feeling like you have to perform, feeling like you have to be like this likable person? I'm sure that's like why a lot of celebrities are very cold.
Well, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, the flip side of that argument is it's not like you don't get paid well. To do it.
Exactly.
It's like you are living a life that most people literally only dream of and do dream of. You have fame, you have, you walk into places, everybody want you, there's not a single place that you can't get into because everyone wants to be around you. You have money, you have all this stuff, you have everything you want money-wise, and it's like, yeah, and yeah, but nothing in life is free.
There's a difference between like everybody wanting to be around you and then everybody wanting something from you.
Well, that thing I can see, because that would be tough too. It's like, if
you want to help people, like I don't want to say you're like a people pleaser, but you want to like give back to people.
Like if the podcast takes off or something, or like if you take off with comedy and you're like,
don't say if, say when.
When. Yeah, I
you
always
speak shit into existence. That's why it's called a spell. But, and I'm horrible at that, but yeah.
I hear that and I get that. I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
I genuinely I don't have to speak out loud what I am manifesting.
Yeah. No,
I'm
I
thinking
respect
it.
that.
When in my mind, the word is when.
Yeah.
When I speak out loud, I say if, because sometimes I find it obnoxious when people are overly confident and overly like, no, not if, when I do that. It's like, okay, dude, we get it. You want to do something and you're working hard towards it. Just say if, we get it. Like if is like, it doesn't have to be like I don't know how to describe it. It's just like, I personally I get that that's like a thing.
Yeah.
But like, if I was just sitting here like, when I'm famous, let me tell you something. When I have thousands of people coming to see me, it's like, no.
Yeah, I know. But I understand. But you keep talking about how like, oh, when I get notoriety or blah, blah, blah. But it's like, or when I'm done. You already know that like you're good enough.
Yeah.
You just have to like keep doing it. And then like this guy, like the fact that it meant like so much to you. And like it, in turn, like you shone a light on him and he shine a light like back at you. Like that is what the energetic exchange is, where sometimes I feel like an energy vampire because I want to do stand up, because I want to be a performer. And I feel like, is it because you're such an attention whore? But you realize like sometimes you're giving people, it's an exchange.
Yeah.
You're giving them something back.
Well, and that's a good point, because so much, I think, what is the word I'm looking for? But like that kind of compulsion to put yourself out to the world, you're almost what you really want, because it's not just wanting to put yourself out there. It's, you have a desire for people to, like you said, shine that light back at you. So you're almost kind of like projecting this thing to have it reflected back on you. And whatever that is, they say like whatever you put out, you get back.
Yeah.
And so I think that like when you're putting out your truth, I've always felt this way, and I noticed this from a young age. Like I found out very early in my life that like if you just like are honest and like open about like stuff that even most people wouldn't talk about, like embarrassing stuff and things, you'll say something, and then what happens is when you say that thing, like when you're a kid, like I remember I think I first realized it when I was in early high school, and we were kind of talking about like shit that young high school kids talk. I mentioned, I was like, yeah, my mom caught me making out with my pillow once. And obviously very embarrassing. And I was like, a young kid. And but like, you watch movies and stuff, you're practicing, whatever. And when I said that, or like humping a pillow or something like that, everyone in the room was like, oh my God, dude, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And like, it was this thing that like immediately when I said it, it kind of opened up everyone else now that I've opened that gate of being like, yo, this is something we can talk about. This is something we all experience. This is something we all do.
That's the difference between somebody who's a gatekeeper and then somebody who's a gate opener.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. And so then all of a sudden, they're all talking about their embarrassing experiences. And then what you have is this much more, first of all, intimate closeness to these people because you know them on a deeper level. And now everyone is also kind of let go of that weight on their shoulders where they feel like they're not allowed to be themselves and they have to project this image. And so much of like that realization for me was like, yeah, like if you're willing to open up yourself to other people, you're not only freeing yourself from that baggage of feeling like you have to pretend to be someone you're not, but you're also opening up the gate for them to be themselves as well.
Yes, you just completely described the reason why I want to be a comedian.
And that is the true artist. So we spent so much at the beginning of this podcast, and I think rightfully so, kind of putting all those devil's advocate possibilities of like, well, if you really get down to it, there's an ego element, there's this, that, the other thing. But really, now that we've kind of hashed it all out, that is probably the best way of looking at it. It's like, it's not a need to express yourself out of ego or feeling like everyone needs to see how I see it. Right. But just the act of putting yourself out there allows other people to feel free to be themselves. And then it's this mutual exchange that just like it's not like if I come to your store and give you money and you give me the candy bar, neither one of us got over on each other. It's a mutual exchange. So true art is this mutual exchange where I'm giving you something and then I get back something from you and everybody leaves happier.
Yes,
everybody leaves better and freer.
Yeah, because exactly. That was beautiful. I mean, it really is like somebody telling you like that your story inspired them or made them not feel so like alone.
I tell you what, let me take a quick bathroom break.
Yeah.
When we get back, let's talk about, the Met Gala and stuff. Issues of the day.
Right.
That's all right with me.
Yeah. We'll talk about the Gucci carriers when you're supposed to free your baggage, not carry it.
Yeah, let's segue a little bit into some topics of the day. You sent me an article before the cast of my favorite event. I just cannot get enough of the Met Gala.
And also just something about like Hollywood is just like, I know you may have heard this before, but like the literal term like Hollywood is esoteric, is about like Hollywood, like that's like the most that the Druids use, like the wood and like their wand, basically. Like I'm like a personal occultist. Like I believe in being an occultist rather than a pop cultist, but I believe that we should use these like symbols and everything to like manifest power for ourselves rather than for like corporations.
Now, before we delve too far in, let's at least confirm where this takes place. Where is the Met Gala?
Tina Fey tells this really funny story about going there with Karl Lagerfeld or whatever his name is, and she said like he's just the most miserable person alive. And she just like walked into like a toxic cloud fart.
Who's this?
Tina Fey said that she went to the Met Gala one time.
Oh yeah.
And like Karl Lagerfeld, like she walked in like a cloud fart.
Karl Lagerfeld
or whatever his name is. Have you seen that like designer? He's like this like creepy looking fucking gremlin man with like black glasses.
No, I'm so.
He's always like, okay,
yeah. I know Chuck Taylor.
Yeah.
So it is held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manhattan, New York City.
Okay.
So it's a New York event. But very Hollywood, obviously.
Right.
Now, from my understanding, it is basically this just very high profile thing where like very exclusive, higher, the people that are like the top of, America loves to think we don't have royalty, but really what we've done in America is we've replaced, like in Britain, they have the Queen.
Right.
In America, we don't have a queen. We don't have royalty in so many words, but we do have
Hunter
Michelle
Biden,
Obama, Beyonce, Kim Kardashian.
Yes, Queen. Isn't Beyonce getting sued or something for like
Probably.
not for evading her taxes? So she's pulling a fucking Trump. If you're gonna hate on Trump, you better hate on Beyonce.
You better hate
That's
on
all.
Queen B. But like so America is we have that. Everybody has that kind of like culture where we feel the need to worship people, and in America we worship celebrity, and so the Met Gala is kind of one of the more egregious displays of that kind of
Is it an egregious display, or is it like an actual like Illuminati occult ritual?
It very well could be some form of a ritualistic thing. I on a personal level don't really I don't delve as far into the occult as you do, although I absolutely do. I think that we arrive at the same conclusions because I think that in a lot of ways, when people talk about like being possessed or like demons and things like that, I tend to kind of explain those things in a less occulty way, but I recognize that they all kind of point in the same direction. And I think that this kind of display, you could look at it if you wanted to, as a sort of demonic thing.
Well, and you see, like they always do like the one eye pose, like especially if you're like watching, like looking at this vigilant citizen website more, you know, just like when it's like the one view that I get on my fucking videos. And podcasts, but it's all about like, and again, I don't necessarily know if it's talking about like opening your third eye, which I believe in, you know, it can be like a positive thing, but it's just this constant like symbolism. And like if you notice, there's a lot of like female like performers and everything. Every single one of them before they pop off like dresses like Marilyn Monroe. And she was like the first like basically like beta sex kitten.
Gotcha.
Who was like, I know it sounds fucking crazy, but it's like if you read about like Marilyn Monroe and everything and the CIA and it just the brainwashing that she underwent.
Well, okay, let me put it this way. I am familiar with the Illuminati and stuff like that, maybe more than you know.
Oh shit! Don't. I'm so glad I got some sleep before I came on here because I
sleep with one eye open, but these two are closed. So I look at it as like basically when we look at like religion and things like that, one of the main things in Christianity is this kind of not placing value in your material possessions, not placing all this.
So you can give them all to the Catholic Church.
Sure. And that's
not Christ's message. That's truly
exactly,
not his message.
Exactly. That's a corruption of his message. But you know, there's so much. They don't place a lot of value on your own personal ego, and I have seen that so much of this consumerist, materialist culture that we've kind of promoted in the West, at the very least, is so contrary to all those values that I think leads to a happy and healthy society. I think that with, when we talk about, like, especially with, I'll say hip-hop music, I think is a great example of that. I think that there's a reason that, and I don't know what the reason is. But you can almost trace and it's not just hip hop, but celebrity culture as a whole, and hip hop definitely on the music side of that is a good example of it, in my opinion. Kind of like the destruction of like marriage communities and things like that. Almost, I would venture to say, almost line up.
Because that BBC's destroying your wife's pussy. No,
there seems to be this. I'm using hip hop as an example, and I always walk the line of like, oh, you're talking about hip hop. Does that mean you're talking about black? It's like I'm just fucking giving a fucking example.
The mic even went like,
even the mic couldn't handle it because the mic's black. He doesn't like when I talk like that. I'm sorry, Mike. But like, there's this kind of promotion of this idea of like, there's not a lot of, they kind of promote things that aren't ideal for the average person to pursue happiness. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like having the nicest fucking clothes and shit like that, and having, not settling down and marrying a woman and raising a family. May I play
just white devil's advocate as
Sure.
far as the material thing? I've heard black people say part of the reason why they talk so much about materialism comes from like slavery.
Absolutely.
And the fact when they couldn't own or possess things that it's just like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that like if you go back in the 60s and stuff, all all the music that was kind of pushed out to people seemed to kind of, a lot of talk about love and things like that.
Yeah.
And
the
then,
age of Aquarius, baby.
And then like the 80s and 90s, it seemed to go like, now we're talking about just like
Madonna.
like the opposite. And Madonna is a good example of that. It's not just hip hop. It's not just black stuff. It's all that stuff. And I'm using hip hop as an example because when I look at like the values that are promoted in that, it's like, yeah, people are talking about that all the time in every facet, but it seems like the music industry really hopped on this one particular type of vibe and said, let's push this out.
Yeah, it's low vibrational. I admit that.
Yeah.
Like,
So low vibrational topics and low vibrational people always will and always have existed. However, the industry made a conscious decision on some level, whether it was just strictly for financials or what it was, who knows. But we have really, as of late, seem to have like pushed anything that would, any type of values or any type of messagery that would be not the ideal type of values and messagery to push on a society. And when you have these displays of wealth and materialism and ego like you have at the Met Gala, it's almost like this, in your way of looking at, like this ritual worship of all those shitty values. Like, oh, look at this person. They're so awesome. They're dressing in this like ridiculous thing because it's not about if it's actually beautiful. It's about how much money it costs or how crazy or different it is. And it's like, it is this kind of weird display, almost ritualistic display of all these values that are not good. Are not good. And the people that buy into them might be low vibrational, but the people that are making the decision to push this on the low vibrational people are not low vibrational. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You're totally like I was listening to a Megan Thee Stallion. Sometimes I want to listen to bad bitch music or something like before a show, just like, but it's like she was like that thought shit, like I'm gonna post a pic and make me a profit. It's like, who is listening to this? Like young girls who the day they turn 18 start an OnlyFans.
Yeah. I mean, OnlyFans is a great example because you have this like, there are girls that are growing up now that in a society that is legitimately succeeding in convincing them that sexualizing yourself is empowerment. And it's not. In my opinion, it's not.
Right.
And I don't see how telling a 17-year-old girl that in 1 year she can post pussy pics and make a lot of money and that's good for society. And they pitch it with this angle of being like, oh, well, you're taking command of your own sexuality, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, what you're actually doing is basically telling women that their best foot forward is their sexuality.
It's literally their foot forward by selling feet pics.
Exactly. It's like, that's not, when we talk about like women, succeeding, it's like, the whole problem before was that women were seen as purely sexual objects and that they couldn't be good at anything else, and therefore they weren't allowed to vote or anything else. Also, people have a lot of very misaligned views of exactly how that was looked because, like, it wasn't like we thought women were fucking trash either back in the day. Obviously it was a different time, but like nowadays we're basically we're almost doing it worse now, where we're like, oh, actually, like, yeah, like, no, actually, being a porn star it's an empowering thing. Having an abortion is a good thing. And it's like, yeah, I'm not saying that you should be able to do that either, but it's like, when these are the things that you're pushing, first of all, it's like, it's very emblematic of a society that's on the downslope, because it's like, abortion has been a thing too. People, but when society was structured in a way that was like, look, when society was structured in a way that like, it was, people have always been out fucking. People have always been getting pregnant out of wedlock, but it was seen as a taboo. It was seen as not the right thing to do.
Now it's not seen as the right thing to do because it's like, oh, you shouldn't it's overpopulated. Don't bring more people into this world.
Well, yeah, but then that always comes down on like the family thing. Like it's like you, in a society that is promoting healthy values, wholesome values, you're still going to have the people that are existing outside of that and having casual sex with a bunch of people and getting pregnant out of wedlock and stuff like that. But
how dare you? I had two. No.
But my personal opinion is like, yeah, those things happen, but it shouldn't be seen as like a good thing. It should be seen as like, oh, well, yeah, that happened. Right. And like, that doesn't make you a bad person if that happened, but we shouldn't be pitching that as on par with like not doing that. You know, like I guess basically what I'm saying now is society's lost all sense of having standards.
Well, it's just, how can you expect relationships between anyone of any sex or gender to be healthy and normal when you can go online and a man can see more naked women having sex than a man 100 years ago saw in his entire lifetime in 1 hour? What is that doing? That's my fear as someone with sons.
That's an excellent point. And
by the time you're 10 years old,
there are a lot of arguments to be made about how bad pornography is just for society as well. And I'm not yet on the train of like pornography shouldn't be legal. And I'm not on that train, but I see the point, because I don't know if human beings are biologically wired to have that much access to sexual stimulation. Whereas like, I feel like it was easier to have people in relationships before all that existed, because like you grow up in a fucking village. Let's say it's 1,000 years ago. You grow up in a village. There's the one other pretty girl in your village that you have a super big crush on, and that's the woman you fall in love with and you get married to. You weren't constantly being influenced.
Or you raped and pillaged her, but
yeah, sure. Hey, or as we call it now, marriage.
Yeah.
But like that, it was like easier because there was less stimuli to fuck with your perception of your wife and your husband. There was less like stuff getting in the way. Now you're constantly being bombarded with like every fucking tens on Instagram and stuff like that. And it's like, I could see how you could make the argument like it does make it harder for men to just be totally focused on their relationship and things like that when they're watching porn and stuff like that. It's like
for girls too, it's just like, okay, why stay with a dude if you have the slightest problem when you can just go on Tinder and it's like fucking Pokemon Go?
Yeah,
like, what can I get?
And now it's seen as a thing where like you know even with like the sugar baby thing, it's like, oh, so now all of a sudden we went from women saying fuck this, I don't have to be reliant on a man, I'm going to go out into the workforce and make my own career, to because before they had to be at home and be dependent on a man's income. And now we've gone back to, it's actually empowering to just have a guy pay for all your shit because he gets to fuck you once every couple months pay for your apartment and stuff. Except the difference between this situation and the situation 70 years ago where it was your husband is this guy now, your sugar daddy, doesn't give a flying fuck about you outside of the fact that he can fuck you. And once he's over that, you're on the fucking street again. And it's like before you had an actual marriage with a family and a real connection with a person. And it's like we've somehow taken all the things that made feminism want to be a thing in the first place and reverted back to them with a different angle. Rebranded it. We rebranded female oppression.
And before anybody cancels me, I'm a phone sex worker. So I'm technically a sex worker. And if I could make bank off of it, even on disability, but I only limit it to what I need because it is such a bad feeling afterward sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a low vibrational feeling. And I'm accepting it because I don't want to work at fucking McDonald's.
Well, hey, and you know what? This is the world we live in. And that is I mean that. And like when I say these things,
and also I live with my Catholic aunt, and like I don't want her hearing me like tell like a dude to jerk off into like women's panties and and worship the goddess. But yeah, worship the goddess, in a wholesome way.
Again, there's a difference between saying something is okay and saying something is good.
Well, it would be okay if this was on the fringes of society. Basically, I'm a person who was born to be on the fringe of society, and I know that about myself. There's always going to be people like that, artistic, creative people, but because that is bleeding into the mainstream, that is the corruption of society at large, I suppose, is that like you have basic like high school girls looking at this going like, oh, I don't have to go to college or I don't have to work at Starbucks or blah, blah. I can just go on OnlyFans and like my dad's friends can find it and buy my fucking pictures and like,
And here's the thing. We have this kind of thing. You'll see a lot of people tweeting stuff and it'll be like, normalize this, normalize that. And I'm always thinking, how about we normalize not normalizing everything? Like some things aren't normal and some things are better that way. Like, I'm not on there being like normalize dropping out of college, playing music at bars and starting a podcast in a garage. I don't need you to normalize that.
Right. Because you're abnormal.
Yeah, I do that. And I don't want every other dude to be doing that as well, because then that would make me not a standout in whatever I'm trying to stand out in.
Right,
exactly. Now everybody's got that type of thing, and now it would be edgy for me to like fucking work in a cubicle. You know what I mean? So it's like what you don't need to normalize everything. It's like, we don't need to normalize sex work. We need to accept that it exists and go like, okay, yeah, you can do that. It's probably not the ideal job to have.
Right.
And even like you said, it's like you recognize that it's not ideal. It's just something that you are doing right now because it's better than the other options.
If I could be a State Farm agent, I would.
Yeah.
But I can't. Like, my brain doesn't work.
And there's no shame in that. It's like even like as it pertains to like, even if you were to say like with abortion, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not thinking you're a bad person if you get an abortion, but the second we start getting to like, yeah, normalize it as like just a thing that you just do, like you fucking buy, you know, you do your taxes. It shouldn't be like that.
Right.
It should be a thing that it's a thing that you can do. But the second you start putting it, the second you, like I said, there's a difference between something being okay and something being good. You can do something and have it be like, yeah, I do that, and that's just what I do. But the second you start promoting that as like a value or a pillar of society or like a good thing to strive for, now you've lost the plot completely.
Right.
And so it's like with this type of thing, with the Met Gala going back, it's like it's a very blatant display of all these type of wrong values in this kind of celebrity worship, and it's more grotesque because they're worshiping themselves as well. They truly do think they're better than you, and that's why Tina Fey talks about like walking into that cloud of just whatever with that guy. It's like, this guy really does think he's better than the average person. He really does think he's above because he has more money and he has more clout, and it's exhausting. It's like, I don't understand how anybody, at least much less on the outside of it, would be interested in it, because I can barely understand if I was in it being into it.
Right,
you know what
right.
I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I'm wearing like a Nirvana shirt right now. Like, that's a classic example of like Kurt Cobain. And I mean, I know that he killed himself because of stomach issues or something, or because of being in pain, but he was the type of person who had all this fame and clearly was very uncomfortable with it. Even people like Lil Peep, I know he died, like I watched a documentary about him, and it's just like these people who are like extremely talented and are just like, they can't handle the egoism of it. Or I can't think of too many modern examples.
A lot of them are also just fucked up people that happen to be talented too, because it's like, like just because you're a great songwriter doesn't mean you're not also a junkie.
Right.
You know, and junkies die. Yeah. Junkies overdose. And like, you know, I feel like there is this common tendency with pop culture, like when somebody famous does it, we always create this other legend around it, like he actually did it because he couldn't deal with just how true his words were and his truth. And it's like, or he's just a guy in a successful rock band who also happened to have a drug addiction that was deadly. Just like millions of people who aren't in famous rock bands die of overdoses.
True. I mean, just like a mom will overdose or something in order to, and you're like, why would you escape your life when you're a mom and you have these like amazing kids? You know, it's a similar thing. Why would you die and want to escape life when you're literally fucking famous and everybody knows your name? But that's the thing, and I don't mean to get all woo-woo and everything, but it's like, that is the age of Aquarius to me. And then the new age, the digital age, is that everyone has the capability of being a star through the internet, through social media. And that is the lie that these celebrities tell us, is they call themselves stars when we literally are all made of stardust.
Well, yes. And there's also this thing where, because the option exists to be everybody, like if you're really into social media, you kind of are curating your own personal celebrity little image. I know that people probably won't believe me, but what I'm curating isn't for my followers, it's for my descendants. Because I truly believe that we are all leaving a digital footprint of our existence. And I think in the future you'll be able to buy like OnlyFans ancestors, but like about like on ancestry.com. Like you'll be able to buy like records of your ancestors, like social media account. You'll be able to buy your grandma's Facebook or like her Instagram and be like, damn, grandma was a thought. Like, or better yet, it's all like, I think about that all the time, even when we do these podcasts.
Yeah.
It's like, in 50 years, assuming that the internet isn't just wiped clean, which is a possibility. But like, our kids are just gonna be able to, our grandkids are gonna be able to watch us in our 30s. Just
yes, talking. And that is exactly what I'm. At least my life is far from perfect, and but at least they can look back and be like, wow, like mom or grandma or whoever, like even if you don't have kids, like whoever, they really lived.
Well, that's the other thing. I'm glad you talk about descendants too, because that's yet another thing that I would say, like in society, that we've kind of steered away from. Like it's so much more common to hear people like talk down on the idea of having kids, or like kids are a burden. And we look at kids like, and that's kind of what drives the abortion debate too, is because we kind of taken this thing where it's like, well, kids are a burden and this, that, the other thing. It's like, yeah, I get all that. But at the same time, it's like they're in a healthy society, a healthy person at a certain point, a kid is a fulfilling thing, or it should be.
Yeah.
And you're perpetuating. It's like putting another life on the planet outside of yourself that is you. And it's basically what immortality is. It's like, I'm only going to live so many years, but I can put another person out there that has all the things that I teach them and all my genes and stuff, and then they can go on to the next thing and perpetuate a legacy that's bigger than just one person.
Exactly.
And I think so much of the whole anti-kid thing sentiment in society now is because we've placed so much value on our own personal identities and egos, which is, again, unhealthy. Because you shouldn't be so self-obsessed that you're looking for immortality or the fountain of youth or drinking fucking adrenochrome or whatever. Like all these, like even in mythology, like these people, it's always associated with narcissism where like they want immortality for themselves. I want to live forever. And it's like, but you are just you, and you aren't meant to be forever.
I got my kids taken away, so that's why I'm trying to fucking achieve immortality through internet clout. No,
you know what I mean? Though? It's
no, it's beautiful. It absolutely is. Like that is like the true like magic, the alchemy of existence is recruit. Like having your legacy is creating something out of it, is the merging of two opposites. Like the DNA strand literally looks like the caduceus symbol, then like the or catechus, whatever you call it, like the medical. It's like the two snakes like intertwined literally looks like our DNA.
Yeah. Yes. And it's this weird form of self-worship that ultimately leads to depression and anxiety, which is another thing that's very much more prevalent in modern societies and very much more prevalent in prosperous societies, more so than like the level of anxiety and depression that you find in your average suburban teenager's household is probably, I would venture to say, more than if you go to like a third world country where it's a different type of thing, where it's like, when you look at like the suicide rates in America, which is a generally, and it's almost, if you look at suicide from a certain angle statistically, suicide almost looks like it's an issue of privilege more so than lack of privilege.
Right.
Where like it seems like you're more likely to commit suicide if you are someone that would be considered to be actually pretty decently well off, as opposed to like, how many people are like starving to death in India that are just fucking keeping going, and it's like, what is that about? Yeah. It shows that there's something in our society that's bigger than just, how rich you are or how much you have, that like, the true meaning of life is something deeper than that we've lost sight of because we're so obsessed with ourselves and our own materialism. But those are all things that like when you place your highest values in things that are temporary, like yourself or your possessions or your anything like that, then you're ultimately going to end up not fulfilled because those things don't last forever. When you place your value in something bigger than yourself, then you can start to see how people can actually feel fulfilled growing old and knowing that it's their time to die, but knowing that they've created descendants and a legacy that carries on. And it's like, because they're worshiping something bigger than themselves. The problem is that human beings need to worship something. Mm-hmm. And when you take God or whatever you want to call it out of the equation, the higher values and things like that, what people are left worshiping are the lower values. The problem with worshiping the lower values is they don't last forever, and therefore your happiness is only temporary too.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and again, I don't mean to be just like so surface level and everything, but like look at Madonna. And look at her. Look at how she looks. She looks like a fucking like creature from like the Black Lagoon, or just like her face. It's just these women that become just totally obsessed with appearance. And I mean, yes, a lot of it is patriarchy's fault, but it's like you're not going to be young and beautiful forever, no matter how much fucking adrenochrome you fucking facial your face with.
And it's almost a very disturbing. Like I do find that one of the more disturbing things when you see these like people, male, female celebrities that were just like obvious, like they were known for their beauty and stuff like that.
Even Joan Rivers, the funniest woman I think alive at the time, is like she did that to herself. It's horrible.
But she's open about it at least.
Right, right.
But like, it is kind of a disturbing thing when you realize like just how kind of empty these people were, that they're in their 60s still trying to be the hot chick, still trying to be the playboy dude. And it's like, Jesus, man, like that's gotta suck. But you're
supposed to move into your wise elder archetype.
Yeah. But
mentor.
But that's what happens when you worship things that are temporary. Your beauty is temporary. We're not going to be young forever. And when you place all your value in being young and handsome or young and beautiful, it's like, well, then you've basically set yourself up for imminent demise.
Yeah,
because when you get old, then it's just this never-ending struggle to hold on to the past. And then you just wind up looking like this crazy lizard person, honestly.
And not even being a Jew.
Yeah. And not even being Jewish. Not even having the self-respect to at least celebrate Hanukkah.
But that's the one thing that is this about finding spirituality that has just given me so much inner peace, is that I believe in an eternal soul. Yeah. And I believe that this soul is basically just like a passport that we take elsewhere, and that this earth is just a school. And I'm not to get on like a huge tangent, because I know we probably got to wrap things up, but it's like I've been reading this book called The 3 Waves of Volunteers by Dolores Cannon, this fucking crazy old bitch that used to do like hypnotism on people's past lives. And she's saying that like a lot of people, when she did hypnosis situations with them, like it used to be people would remember their past lives on earth. Mm-hmm. But after World War II, more and more people didn't ever remember a time when they were on Earth. They remembered a time when they were like on another planet or in perfect union with the cosmos, at perfect peace and happiness. And that's why a lot of people now are suicidal, or a lot of people are so uncomfortable here, so much like anxiety, not fitting in, not finding your tribe, because you feel like you don't belong here. Mm-hmm. But these people are actually like meant to bring light. Mm-hmm. But I know it sounds crazy and stuff.
No, it doesn't.
Off on like a tangent and everything. But
no, it doesn't. It doesn't sound crazy.
But it goes back to like the beginning when you're talking about like I don't have notoriety, I don't have fame, but like what you're supposed to do, Jimmy, is you're just supposed to be yourself.
Yeah. And
you are light, and you are helping other people. Your purpose is just to exist.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know I'm like getting kind of like deep there, but it's like that's just the thing that like monetary value and clout has kind of like the forces, are working against us to like keep us from ascending to that higher vibration.
Oh, totally. And like even the idea of purpose, I talked about this with the guy Joe in my band. The idea of purpose, if you go into physics, I'll try to make this brief.
Yeah, I got my GED. You got to break it down.
But like, if you go into physics, in the theory of relativity and quantum physics and stuff like that, is when you really start to delve in the idea, A, that time is relative. And because time is relative, then it's not all happening at the same time for every person, which means that time is more like an experience it's an experience that is dependent on the experiencer, if that makes any sense. So like the idea that if time is just something that you experience at your own rate, and somebody could experience time faster or slower than another person, then in reality, it would almost lead you, I know this is kind of a logical jump, but just try to bear with me here, that like all of time kind of already exists and we're just experiencing it. Meaning that I always used to think, and I always used to find it kind of interesting, that like it's only ever been now. And one of the weird kind of things that happens as you get older and you experience it on a personal level is that like the same person who's a 30-year-old dude now in a garage was the same person who was a 30-year-old dude driving up here earlier today, and was the same person who was an 11-year-old in middle school, the same person who was 4 in my parents' basement. And like I've always been me, and it's always been now, and then you get to these milestones so they're like, you always have an idea of what it was like to be 30, and then you are 30, and then you're like, oh wait, I just am still me. Exactly. I imagine I would be 30-year-old me, but I'm not 30-year-old me, I'm just me. Yeah. I've always been me. And like, so you get into it where you're like, you start to realize that like the past is a memory and the future is just like an idea, but it's always ever going to be now. It's only the present always, and has always been now. At any time in history, it's been now. And so let me see where I was getting at with that. 1 second. Oh, yes. The idea of purpose is almost a delusion that because we can't conceive of the idea that the future and the past are just kind of like they're just like ideas. You know what I mean? Like the past is kind of the story that I have in my own head to make sense of why I'm here right now. And whatever ideations I have of the future is just like ideas I have, So you like, 1 second, I keep on losing myself here because this is kind of a weird thing to get at. But so with purpose necessitates future, because when you're sitting here going like, I'm here now, but why? a purpose says, well, you're here now because in the future you're supposed to be here. Well, if there's no real actual such thing as the future and it's always just now, the present, then that means at the same time there's no such thing as purpose. Does that make any sense? Like the purpose, like you said, is just to exist. You are here now. It's always going to be right now. And you're wasting your time trying to answer the question, why? Why am I here now? I don't know. I don't know how I got here. Nobody knows how we got here. And nobody knows what happens when we're not here. Right. So it's just now. And so all those things of like purpose, it's like that also leads to a depression because like I find that most of my depression and anxiety comes from feeling like I'm not doing something now that's going to lead to something that I want out of life in the future, whether that is success or notoriety or whatever things that I want, whatever I've thought about in my own mind as things that would make me happy. Mm-hmm. But that whole thought process of purpose is what's really, because I have this purpose in my mind that I'm supposed to be this thing. And because I'm not that thing now, and this future idea of what I'm supposed to be is constantly making the current me upset that I'm not that thing. But if you lose all that bullshit and you just go, wait a second, if I want to be that thing in the future, I have to be it now.
Yes.
And I have to do the things now that make me that thing in the future because the future isn't real. It's just now later.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's extremely deep. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the old you, when you were just starting out as like a musician and everything, you probably dreamt of like the fact of just being able to walk in any bar and being like, look, pay me to do a show here. Mm-hmm. But then present you is dreading it because it's not something bigger that you're envisioning or it's not the place that you necessarily want to be, but you used to want to be there.
Yeah, because now that is my now my future is something bigger. So it's just constant like chasing the carrot dangling from the head. It's like, well, I'm here now. Like the carrot was here. And then I got here, but now the carrot's there. Right. And it's like when you live like that, then yeah, that is what causes depression. I feel like a lot of the people, the most happy people on the planet are the people that are just going like, you know what? I'm here right now. And if I want to be happy, then I have to be happy now. And I have to do the things that make me happy now.
Right.
Or else it'll just, like I said, it'll be now later and I still won't be happy.
I mean, that your future you could be like, having a record deal or something or like performing and then you're unhappy because you can't have that personal connection like you did with that dude in the bar because you have to just walk out on stage and just be a persona and not have that one-on-one connection without fearing someone's going to assassinate you.
Yeah. And then you go from living in the future
and then you'll know that your friendships aren't genuine because you'll be thinking, oh, somebody just wants something from me out of this. Yes.
And that being said, there are people who live in the future. I consider myself one of those people. And then there are people who live in the past. At least the people living in the future have a purpose.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although the purpose is kind of what leads to all those other things we talked about. Living in the past is even worse because now the rest of your life is literally pointless because you're just constantly trying to get back to where you were.
Right.
Which is also impossible.
And I don't mean to keep talking about like Lord of the Rings and stuff, but it's just like, or even Harry Potter, just like think about the fantasy, think about the hero's journey. It's like, it's not necessarily the ending after they threw the fucking ring in the volcano and then they had like the 30 to 40 minute ending that dragged on forever, you know, like Kevin Smith talks about where the hobbits went to Rivendell and they were all gay and shit together. It's like, it was just the journey that was epic.
Well, the best way to like make a good example of that is imagine if you walked into the theaters and the credits come on and then it says Lord of the Rings. And then the first scene is the last scene in the movie. And then the credits come back on and it's over. And what you realize is, oh, wait, the only reason that final scene had any significance whatsoever was because of the entire story leading up to it.
Yes,
The only way that anything has meaning is because of how you got there.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes, yeah.
So like that, I mean, I don't know. That feels
like sometimes, you know, like when you skip to like the ending of a book or something, when you flip through the pages, like I just want to know that at the end of my life, I'm just this old bitch just like laying on my deathbed and my grandkids or whatever around me and are just like, Grandma, you know, before you die, tell us the story of your life. And I'll be like, well, I got a fucking story for you motherfuckers. Here we go. I just want to know that that's where it ends. And like that I left a legacy behind, that I carved my life out the way I wanted to, that I created something.
I have a feeling that if I'm lucky enough to be, I don't even know if that would be considered lucky. Sometimes I go back and forth between like just dying unexpectedly and suddenly, because then you're not like contemplating it, or like, but like being on like your deathbed, I feel like that would kind of suck. But at the same time, it's got to be this crazy experience because you spend your whole life, like I said, living in the future. And then you hit the end and you're like, wow, this is literally, there is no future. This is just it. Every idea I ever had that was going to happen beyond here. Now I realize this is the last moment.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a crazy thing, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was at my mother-in-law's deathbed last year around this time, and she was horribly abused throughout her life. She was a cancer patient, a miserable, depressed person. And I was at her deathbed, and she died with this beautiful smile on her face. And she died. It's just so to see somebody like that had like their whole life just like fucking miserable and pain, to go out with a fucking smile. I mean, it was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. And like me and heroin addict cousin Brandon, he looked at me. He's like, "Oh my God, Sam, I'm so glad you saw that with me." It's like,
it really makes you wonder what, like, everybody wants to know what happens when you die, and the best way I can try to imagine it is I really do feel like it's like when you wake up from a dream.
Yeah.
I really do think there's some type of weird illusion or delusion, whatever you want to call it, that we exist in consciously in life. And then when your physical body dies, it's like when you're asleep, you have this whole storyline in your dreams that seems just as real as regular life. That's why you fucking don't wake up immediately, because you're just like, this is normal. This is happening.
Right.
And then when you wake up, you realize, oh, none of that shit actually happened. It was just a dream. And it's like, maybe when you die, it's like you realize that all of this was just some crazy fucking dream in a way. Not to sound like super cliche guy trying to sound deep, but like the best terminology I've thought of to use for it is that metaphor or that example or analogy, I guess would be called. Like, it's got to be something, I like to imagine it's something where like you die and you realize that like they always talk about like that we're all the same consciousness. And when you die, like, just like when you wake up from a dream and you realize that like, oh, when I was talking to my mom in the dream, that was me. When I was talking to that guy at the store in my dream, that was also me, just being different people talking to myself. And it's like when you die, you realize like you are everything. Everything is everything, you know? And then
so does that mean it's okay to be a narcissist?
Well, that's another.
You see yourself in everything.
That's another thing that's like the weird paradox of this way of thinking, is because if you think that you are everything, then you are a narcissist.
Yeah.
But if you think that everything is you,
okay.
Then you're probably right.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's fucking beautiful. Yeah, I mean, like, it's I don't know. It's kind of just like when you create, like in the Sims game, like the Sims 4, like you create like a sim. Like I always wonder all the time, like, are we actually like creating like lives there, just like simulated lives? It's just, that's like, are we like the sim for like something else?
I've had very, I've had very strange thoughts about if like your dreams are actually real, that you're just like in like, because if you think about it, it's like, okay, think about this for a second. The average person, they say you're supposed to sleep 8 hours a night, right?
Yeah.
I know most people don't, but I do, because I don't have a real job. So I get my fucking sleep in, fellas. I wake up at 10. My alarm goes off at 10. I get out of bed at 10:30. I'm sleeping. Your boy's out here sleeping. That's how you stay young, really.
Right. But you're staying woke at the same time.
Staying woke. Gotta sleep to stay woke. So, okay, so there's only 24 hours in a day. If you're asleep for 8 of them, then that means that 1/3 of your life is in this unconscious state. That's not a small amount. That's not a small percentage of your life.
Right.
That means that it's like a 2-to-1 ratio of waking life to dream life. Now, if we've all agreed that waking life is real, based on what parameters? Mm-mm. Based on what metric that we all are awake and agree it's real? Well, when I'm asleep, everyone in my dream agrees that's real too.
Right.
Like, there's a solid 1/3 of my life where everyone I encounter is all in on it, just like everyone's in on it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I've really thought about it. I was like, what makes regular waking life any really more real than your dream life?
Right.
Because there's really no metric of realness. There's not like a realometer that just, we're dialed in at 10 reels. It's not a thing. It's like we all agree that this is real, but like I said, you agree for 1/3 of your life that that's real until you wake up and you realize that wasn't real either.
Right.
And then when you die, maybe you realize this wasn't real. You know, it's like,
yeah.
So I've actually wondered, like, dude, what if dreams are like real too? Like that's just another part of your life. That's like the astral realm. And I would hate to believe that because I've done some weird shit in my dreams.
Yeah.
That when I wake up, I'm glad that wasn't real.
Like what? You should
Jeez.
start keeping a dream diary. Really. I don't dream because I smoke marijuana.
I've had, I've like killed people. I've had like,
Who did you kill?
Gay interactions.
Yes.
And like, I'll wake up and I'll be like, I know I'm straight because when I wake up, I'm like, what was I thinking?
That's awesome.
Like,
yeah.
I've done some gay shit in my dreams. And like, I'm like, what the fuck, dude?
Right. Well, okay, do you think that it's like your subconsciousness projecting itself, or do you think that you're actually like a part of your soul, or like your astral light body is traveling to a different dimension? This is super deep. I'm not even smoking weed, people. I've been smoking Newports, chain smoking this entire time.
If you do talk in the studio for long enough, you are naturally on weed.
Yeah.
I want a scientist to come in and measure our THC levels as we go through a podcast just to see. I guess my view of the universe is more internal, meaning that
that's very profound.
Like, when people talk about dimensions, we kind of look at it as like our physical body traveling through different dimensions.
Right.
The spatial dimensions are length, width, and height. There are 3D dimensional things, and then you have the fourth dimension, which is time, which is us moving through the 3-dimensional space at a defined rate. And the 3-dimensional space changes with time. So time is the 4th dimension.
Yeah.
It's a 3-dimensional space over time. That's a 4D space, I guess. And then you have other dimensions that are like...
Grant Morrison says the 5th dimension is imagination.
Sure. And I would agree because... But if the 5th dimension is imagination... And first of all, string theory says there's 26 dimensions. I don't know. I haven't put in my number yet. I don't know how many numbers I'm willing to go on the record saying. But mathematically, they're able to prove these different dimensions. The problem is that when we say the word dimension, we really only truly conceive of the first 3, which is space. And then we kind of pretend to comprehend the 4th one, which is time. Meaning that most people that are anywhere relatively aware of physics would be like, yeah, time is a 4th dimension, but nobody really knows what that means. We just know that is true, But then you go into the 5th dimension, like, what is it? So like, we keep on looking at the higher dimensions, trying to understand it through the lens of how we perceive of the dimensions we do perceive of.
Exactly, right.
So when we talk about, a different dimension, a dream realm or something like that, I don't think of it as physically going to another place necessarily, but more so like if imagination is the 5th dimension, that consciousness is this kind of thing where like, so you have 3-dimensional space and then, let me see. I was going to draw something for you here.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. And
if you have to go at any point.
Oh, no. Time doesn't exist. No, I'm just checking in with, but yeah. It's very interesting too because it's like anytime that I know I'm going to sound like fucking crazy, but I've encountered and I've usually been on acid or something. But anytime I've encountered like other worldly beings or anything, it is like a hallucination kind of like where they're not like solid or anything like that, but they appear like fifth dimensional to me. Like, like it's like an animation type thing. Like, and
now, let me see if I can do this for the viewers too here.
Yeah.
This is how I perceive of dimensions.
Science talk.
All right. So we're going to do one dimension. Mm-hmm. One dimension would be a line, right? Mm-hmm. 2 dimensions. So that's just one direction. You can go one direction. 2 dimensions would be like a square. You can go this way or that way. That's 2-dimensional. Now, if you existed where you could only perceive of one dimension of time, let's say you're just this point on this line. That's you. That's your life. And all your life in space, you're only able to travel this way, left, or right. Can everybody see that? Everybody see that? You're able to travel left or right. Now, if time was the second dimension, meaning that you're just experiencing your one-dimensional reality over the course of time, which is 2 dimensions, what would happen is you exist now, you can't tell because you only live in one dimension this way. But there's this whole square here. And with every moment of time, your line is moving up, up, up through that square. And every moment of time, you're just the same guy on that same line, but moving through a dimension that you can't perceive of. If you were to zoom out to the 3rd dimension and look down at the paper, you would see that you're just a guy on the line, but there's this whole square that you're traveling through that you can only see one moment in that square at a time. Does that make any sense? Probably not. I'm not doing the best job.
No. But are you saying that basically we perceive time as linear, but it's not?
Yes. Yes. And that we see things in a 3-dimensional form, experiencing time as moment to moment to moment, not realizing that so we experience like me right now, like my 3-dimensional form right now in this moment of time is this, but my 4-dimensional form would be everything I've ever been.
Yeah, that's fucking trippy, dude.
You know what I'm saying? My 4-dimensional, just like this mythological person on this line in a 1-dimensional world only perceives himself as always being on that line. He doesn't realize that he's traveling through this square and he's actually going through that whole 2-dimensional realm the whole time. You could make the same analogy for a square traveling through a cube, and you can make the same analogy for us traveling through time, which is the 4th dimension. So we experience the 4th dimension as segments of 3-dimensional reality. That makes any sense.
Whoa.
So, but if that is the case, which it is, I'm going to go on record saying that it is, then the 5th dimension, all that stuff, and like consciousness, like, your future, your imagination of stuff, like all the different ideas that you like are all different, like conscious thoughts that you've had that you've never, that you may or may not ever physically exist in. Mm-hmm. Do those ideas not still exist somewhere? They exist in your mind.
Right.
Which means they exist, just not in your perceived reality. But your perceived reality is limited to your place in the dimensions of space. So in a way, you could argue that the same way I'm arguing that dreams could be just as real as waking life, dreams are ideas. And if ideas exist, they certainly do, just like René Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. The only thing I do know for sure is that I exist because something is existing to think this thing, meaning something exists, which means I exist, which means that, even if everything else is just a weird imagined thing and that I'm imagining that I'm this thing, something has to exist to think that it's me.
Right.
So something exists. So your ideas...
Have you just proved that God is real?
I think we might have. I think we may have just...
Fuck you, grokkers, or whatever you...
Look, I'm not one to overstate a point, but we may have just right now, proven God. Live on the air. What is grokking, by the way? What's that?
Okay, so I wasn't familiar with the term grokking until I listened to their podcast, and then I looked up kind of what Jordan pointed me toward. But grokking just basically means when you hear a spiritual concept or something about God, and then you just immediately get it and understand it because it feels like it's just like an innate thing that your inner being knows. So you're like, okay, I'm grokking what you're putting out there right now, like with their.
I love that. On on the same level, I must say, I do not grok with the word grok.
It's like a sci-fi term or something like that.
I really feel like we could come up with something like more spiritual sounding.
Well, it sounds kind of like a 90s new metal like thing, like they're like grok grok.
It sounds like a mythological monster or something.
Yeah, yeah.
I am grok.
But yeah, that's like the sci-fi writer or something. He came up with the term, and then like metaphysical people co-opted it.
Kind of like how the realization, there's a word for this, the realization that every single person has a unique experience that is just as in depth and involved as yours in their own personal life. Like they're living life and experiencing it from their point of view the same way you are.
Yeah.
That's called sonder. That's the word for that is called sonder. S-O-N-D.
I feel like I've heard that before, but I didn't know what that meant. Yeah.
The word doesn't quite, like the sound of the word doesn't quite encapsulate just how profound of a meaning it has.
Yeah.
You know? Grok. When you innately understand someone on a deeper level that transcends knowledge or transcends language, so that even you're trying to communicate something that is beyond language, and because they're also on that same level with you, can fill in the blanks and be right there with you on a deeper level. Yeah. The fact that we decided that grok is the word. I'm not grokking with it. Not grokking with it.
Take that, motherfuckers. No, I remember Jordan Levine always used to just open with like, what's up, motherfuckers? But yeah, and that's another just bizarre thing is just like, I haven't seen that dude in years. And I used to like read tarot for him sometimes before like sidebar open mics. We used to like smoke weed together. And then all of a sudden through this podcast, they're just like, we came back on the same similar spiritual wavelength. Yeah. And are like communicating again. Just like someone that I didn't think I would ever see again. Yeah. It's just, it's beautiful and bizarre. And
I haven't seen him in years either. He's played bass and guitar for me a couple of my gigs.
He does everything. He's truly a Renaissance man. And really his artwork is amazing.
And I feel for some reason closer to him within the past few weeks. Yeah. Just because he's recording this podcast with Alex now. And like, I just feel like it's just a matter of time till I run into him again somehow.
Right. You see, these are like Hermes and Hermeticism and everything has been like an important part of like my spiritual awakening. And one time we'll talk about the Kabbalah or whatever, if you're not familiar, and just to hear like someone that I used to know and hang out with and smoke weed with, and like Eric's brother talking about like Hermes and the Hermetic philosophy, and like we're right here in Baltimore, baby. Like it's awesome. Like, and just it proved to me that like people are getting more spiritual, and I like that it's coming from a masculine point of view, because I think that
me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Because again, like like of course you want like the basic witchdom and like the chakras and everything and the crystals, but like I think men need like a spiritual.
We need to explain it our own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of the day, women and men are different, sue me. And, the way that we resonate with certain, like, that's the most classic thing in relationships. Like, men and women find themselves in relationships, arguments in the relationships all the time, because we just simply operate on different, like, wavelengths in a lot of ways. Like, like, I always got, and still do, a lot of times getting like fights with my girlfriend when she's like venting to me about something. And as a man,
you want to fix it.
I want to fix it.
Yeah, yeah.
But as women, we want a
bitch. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm glad you said that.
We just want to vent when I get it.
It's like an emotional thing. Like they're expressing something they're feeling, but men really aren't wired that way. To be like, men are wired to be like, this is a problem.
Is it wiring, or is it just social conditioning that makes you feel like you have to keep it inside?
It's
or
wiring.
A mixture of both.
It's wiring, in my opinion. I always, whenever people say social constructs, I always say, well, social constructs are biological constructs. The best example I can use is God didn't come down one day and flip a coin and say, I don't know, how about we make, like, there was no society that just men and women were existing the same way. They were just equals. And then somebody was like, you know what we're going to do? Let's try this out. How about we make men, you guys are the ones that are going to be like the territorial ones that protect the tribe. I'm just spitballing. I have no reason for doing this. But also we should make women, you guys should be like more nurturing, that like more like our homemakers and stuff. And that, of course, it has nothing to do with the fact that your physical body is literally built for that. This is just a complete coincidence that I'm just making up socially. Let's just make this thing up where men are wired to do certain things and women are wired to do other things. and let's give it a whirl, guys. And then it just caught on, and then every society and every animal species just all happens to have very, very similar and consistent gender roles between how males act and how females act and how females interface with the world and how men interface with the world. Obviously, a lot of the very specific things in like certain things in human and American society vary culture to culture. But what I always think about is if you go to every species of animal, not every male in every species has the exact same roles, but there are gender roles in basically every species of animal, meaning males do certain things, females do other things.
Yeah, the praying mantis rips the fucking dude's head off. Like
now, also, when I say they're not all the same, most of them are.
Yeah.
Most of them are. So like you could point out some like obscure fucking insect that like, well, actually in this species, males do this, women do that. Well, it's like, well, that's still a gender role. It just happens to be different than our gender role. But also the vast majority of species also happen to be consistent with our gender roles. Like I find it difficult to look at human beings and look at the way society is structured and go, it doesn't make sense to me why men have this position and role in society and why women have this other one. It makes perfect sense, and that's not saying that you should be like chained up by that or that you shouldn't be able to exist outside of it, but to simply go and look at the way things are and say that was all just made up.
Well, and then this is the anti-feminist part where it's like a lot of my intelligent female friends who are like, I guess heterosexual or whatever, in relationships with men who are working, have careers. They're putting up with like these dudes who have like no purpose and are just basically couch goblins playing video games all day because that's their only way of like channeling their inner masculine and the inner hunter nature, I guess, of men.
100%.
And they're not like, and I'm not saying it's women's fault or anything like that, but it's like, okay, so you're having a negative gender role for yourself where you're with a man and he's basically providing nothing. Then he's addicted to porn or something on top of that. So he's not even giving you good dick.
We've created, look, I'm glad you said that because what we've done is we've created a society by kind of like blurring the lines of gender roles. Again, I'm not arguing that like if you're a woman you have to do this or if you're a man you have to do this. I'm simply saying that like men and women are wired to, just like in conversation we tend to gravitate towards certain ways of communication, certain ways of dealing with situations. We are wired through interfacing with life differently. And when you create a society, we've basically created a society where we've told women that they're not happy unless they go out and get a career and do all the things that traditionally men would have done. And then in doing so, we've created a society where now that women are out working a career that they're trying to convince themselves they're happy. Not saying that there aren't career women, there are. But there's also a lot of women who are working a 9 to 5 that aren't really that into it. And the second they have a kid, they're like, dude, if I could have a husband that could just fucking like support the house and I could be with my kids and raise them and like be a good mother and do mother shit. Like there's a lot of women that are like that. And it's like, we've created a society that's basically told them that's not okay. You have to do this. So now we have a lot of women working jobs that they don't feel fulfilled in. They're not career, or they're just like, I'm doing this thing because I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do, but this isn't like what I really want to do. And then you have a bunch of men that now are obsolete because their girlfriend's making more money than them and they can't get a fucking shit going. And so they're completely useless now. So now you have a bunch of useless men and a bunch of women that are doing shit that they don't even really feel like doing.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to work because I'm a piece of shit, but no.
Like it's just like like I had this exact conversation with my girlfriend where I was like she has a job. She makes about as much as me. I guess she lives for free because she lives in a staff apartment. So if you factor out that she doesn't have to pay rent, I guess she actually makes more than me.
Yeah.
But like I was saying to her, I was like, look, the one thing I would say is I don't think that you relate to me on the level of like, I want you to move back to Baltimore. But I also understand that like you have a job in Miami, and for me to ask you to move back to Baltimore and leave the job that you currently have, I would have to be able to bring something to the table to be like, I can support you at least until you figure out something here. Right, and the fact that I can't makes me feel unfulfilled as a man.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And I don't know if women have that thought. I don't know if a girlfriend is sitting there like, wow, I really want my boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that I'm not able to support him makes me feel like less of a woman. I think that there's something.
I'm a selfish piece of shit, so I can't emotionally support anyone else. That's the lack.
Well, I think that there's a wiring in a man's brain.
Well, there should be. That's positive masculinity to me.
Yeah.
But that's what's missing a lot from millennial and Gen Z men. And
I'll give you an example of a social construct. Men paying for the first date.
Yeah.
That's a social construct because going out to a restaurant is a social construct, I guess. But that's a biological construct because what you're really doing is it's a specific human way of demonstrating your ability to provide.
Right.
It like, even though we live in a more woke society, more modern or whatever, where like maybe it's not as much expectation, it still kind of is. And women still kind of probably feel a certain way when a guy's like, let's split the check. It's like, it's just kind of like a thing. And the reason it's a thing is because people made up the idea of going to a bar. That's made up. But we didn't make up the idea of a man demonstrating his ability to provide to a female to prove himself as an adequate mate. That is biological. That's animal shit.
Right.
That's not a social construct.
Like the male penguin will give like the female penguin a rock.
Yeah. He's saying like, hey, I can go out. Like I'm able to get food. If you have kids with me, I'll be able to provide for the kids.
But he is the one that warms the egg, and she's the one that goes in the river.
Yeah. Well, they take turns, but it's like, if some other dude comes over here and tries to fuck with our nest, I'm the guy that's fighting him. Like, these are all things like you're trying to demonstrate different shit like that. And what I've been watching this documentary. I just finished it. It's called Chimp Empire on Netflix. You should watch it.
Yeah.
It's a 4-episode
Simp Empire.
Simp Empire, yes. The chimpanzees are taking over. And what you realize is like you see so many parallels between like how they like the males have certain roles.
Because we are chimpanzee. I mean, with a little bit of alien in us. That's the missing link.
Yeah. And they like it's just I'm not gonna get into specifics because it's probably boring, but like just the idea that like you see like wow, like so many of the things that like men do and what women do, it's not uniquely human. And they experience love and they experience working their way socially with politics and grooming and things like that and trying to solidify themselves in the social hierarchy and all these things that we look at as humans. Basically what humans do is because we are intellectual enough and we've intellectualized these innate things, we think that they're unique things. Mm-hmm. So basically we experience love but because we're able to write poems about it and like describe it and intellectualize it,
right?
Some people might look at love as like a uniquely human thing, which that's probably
what
example.
is the greatest example of love to me is that my uncle told me that he had 2 songbirds once, and then when the one songbird died, the other one stopped singing.
Wow.
So it's like if you can't tell me that animals aren't capable of love, it's like
The best way to describe it is like, look, gravity exists whether you know it does or not.
Yeah.
At any time in history, if I held up something and let go, it falls.
Oh, shit.
It falls to the same rate. Before we knew that it was negative 9.81 meters per second. That's all us intellectualizing what already exists. Human beings have intellectualized instinct to the point where we think that all the things that we instinctively do are social constructs. They're not. All we've done is understand them. But in a way, we've now brought ourselves away from understanding, which is probably what the Garden of Eden was about with the Bible, in that the tree of knowledge being that like we ate from the tree of knowledge to understand our existence, and in doing so we have less of an innate understanding of our existence because now we're relying on our intellectual abilities to understand our purpose and why we're here and what we're doing, as opposed to just probably the feeling of serendipity that an animal might have in just existing.
Exactly.
And not over intellectualizing it, and therefore they're probably more connected with what it means to be alive.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very beautiful. Like I don't even know where to like end it on that, but yeah, other than the fact that I think the apple was a shroom, but but yeah, see, like Jimmy, like you say, oh yeah, I just perform at bars, or I just I'm just like a bro, but it's like no, like you have like definitely like a philosopher. Like I think all the best philosophers in life were students of life necessarily, and it doesn't matter about your education or anything. So
100%.
Fuck yeah. I guess I'll just like end it by pulling like a card just to
Yeah, let's do it.
The collective. Do you have like a particular question or anything? Or should I just? It can be just about life in general. You just.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I'll ask a specific question this week.
Yes.
how is the Booze Belt Bash gonna go?
Yes, the Booze Belt. Okay, and where is it going to be? At Rotos.
Rotos
on Sunday at 2.
Yeah, everybody come out. Rotos
yeah.
in Fells Point, Sunday, May 7th. This Sunday at 2 p.m. We're gonna present the Booze Belt and bracket.
Yes. Are you singing like all your original songs, or are you mixing some
Probably.
covers in? Hell yeah.
It's not like a paid gig, so we're just gonna play whatever we feel like doing. We're probably gonna mostly do originals.
That's the best kind.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think you guys need to come up with an album or put it out there. Yeah, and see, that's an awesome thing. It's like it's taken years and stuff, and those were always like the best albums. Like that came
now
out.
I'm stressed. Now I'm stressed because my entire fate of this weekend is
no. Okay, how is the Booze Belt going to go on Sunday? 3 of Scythes, which means it was reversed though, which means reverse heartbreak.
Does reverse mean you pulled it out upside down?
Yeah, but that's the opposite of that, which means that something, and it's 3, that you guys are like 3 in a band and everything like that, and it shows like people just like kind of like sitting there like with boredom and everything like that, but it's like in reverse. So it means that I think because you are performing your own original unique material, because you're performing something that you're passionate about, that you're doing for free, it's going to liberate something within the band and within your guys' soul.
All right, so we got the 3 of Scythes.
Yeah, that's the 3 of
but
swords.
in reverse.
Yeah. And
which means that sophomore at the Booze Belt, the sophomore trio at the Booze Belt Bash this Sunday will be the opposite of a heartbreak, my friends. And I don't know how else. I think that's a great way to pitch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Come out this Sunday to have your heart unbroken.
Yes. Fuck yeah. Okay, we've been InfoWarlocks. There is a war on for your magic.